The Demon King city was ablaze with flames, and the entire ground was littered with demon corpses. The Demon King, sitting on his throne and looking at them, said that an entire era had already passed, during which time so many heroes came here to fight with him. His name is Belmont, a demon lord who has reigned for 1,000 years. 100 years ago, he destroyed the fire element hero using ice flame. 90 years ago, he destroyed the water element hero by drowning with boiling water. 70 years ago, he blew away the air element hero using the primordial vortex spells. 50 years ago, he buried the earth element hero using pure earth magic. After that, no hero should dare to invade his domain. But one girl still decided to do it. She entered the throne room and said that they had finally met. She stepped on the demoness head and she called out to her lord plaintively. Belmont asked if they hadn't learned their lesson so well over the years. Against him, who has comprehended all the basic elements, they don't stand a chance. The girl said that men like to show off their abilities so much in advance. Until they check it out, they won't know. With that, she pounced on him and the battle began. The battle of the century lasted 7 days and 7 nights until she kissed him. Belmont was surprised and wondered if his body was being controlled by some unknown magic. A hole appeared in his chest and he thought, how is this possible? His power is evaporating. What element does this magic belong to? The girl said it was a pair cultivation method. The Demon King, who had been undefeated for 100 years, was finally defeated by a hero. The name of this legendary hero is Aaliyah. 50 years later, the girl told the children that in front of them is the main place of their program, the City Museum of the Demon King. The boy called her Lady Amu and asked, will they finally be able to see the hero and the Demon King? She replied that everything is correct, but she reminds that the exhibits are forbidden to touch. This girl's name is Amu, and she's a knight of the royal family. They entered the palace and the children looked in surprise at the stone statue that sat on the throne. Amu said that this is the Demon King. After it was sealed, it turned into a statue, and ever since then, the mainland of Pre-Style has finally been at peace thanks to the great hero Aaliyah. The children looked at the statue of the girl and one of them said that she was so beautiful. When he grows up, he also wants to become the same person as Lady Hero. Amu said that they were now heading to the next hall. She walked past the maid and said that she had something to say. She grabbed the girl's hand and said that since Lady Hero had shown mercy, the demons were allowed to live with them. Horns are their specific feature. The maid exclaimed, what is she doing? Amu pushed her to the floor and told her that although their innate magic was sealed, just like the Demon King, they now had no ability to do evil. She went to the next room and said that they would now continue their tour. The demoness cursed and the children went after the knight, saying that this is so cool. The demoness looked after them and said that she only had to hold out until the evening. Amu went on, ignoring her. The same day, in the evening, the demoness entered the throne room and looked at the bottle of liquid in her hand and said that it was a demon dragon saliva magic power booster. After 50 years, she finally collected the right amount. She looked at the statue of Mr. Belmont and said that this day had come. She uncorked the bottle and said it was the only chance. She drank the liquid and felt a long-forgotten sense of magical power. She cast a spell and a magic circle appeared above her. She gathered all her strength in her hands and directed the magic at the Demon King. Everything went quiet around her and she dropped to her knees and asked, did you make it? A crack went through the statue and the stone broke. The demoness cried and said that she had finally waited for this day. Day of the Demon King's rebirth Belmont. The last shards of stone fell to the ground and a young man appeared in front of her. She was surprised, and he said he felt like he'd been asleep for 100 years. The girl asked, isn't he Lord Belmont, the Demon King? He confirmed her words and asked her who she was. The girl was delighted and, looking at his gaze, thought that even if he looked like a 16-year-old boy, but the aura and charisma around him were still the same. She hugged him and told him it was really him. Her name was Lacey. She started to cry and he said her name in surprise. He thought of her that day, and after looking at her breasts, he asked her why she was impersonating Lacey. She was surprised and said it was really her. After that battle, the demons lost their ability to use magic, and the appearance of many of them suffered changes. Ever since then, she has had to disguise herself and at the same time collect all the necessities on the black market and wait for his return. She said that she missed her old figure so much. Belmont asked, so this appearance is related to magical changes. By the way, this woman used an unknown element magic to seal it that time. Lacey replied that it didn't matter. Their race's days of deprivation were over. Even though he still hadn't regained his strength, as long as his heart was beating, he would be able to lead them. Belmont went to the window and said he was refusing. He has other things on his mind right now. He looked at the clothes that were in the window and Lacey was very surprised. She asked, what matters more than the rebirth of the demon race? He dressed up and said that he had been a demon lord for 1,000 years and was long tired of it. In addition, now everyone lives in peace and earns their own work. Is it bad? Lacey exclaimed, how can you do that? She sighed and thought it was their own fault. They were so much in awe of the Demon King's power that they had completely forgotten that he was still a youth by their standards. Lacey asked him to tell her what magic she used to seal it. Maybe if she knew the name, she could find some way. He agreed and said that he remembered the magic that the woman had used. Lacey asked him patiently, "What kind of magic is this?" He said it was a sort of mouth-to-mouth ritual of exchanging fluids. The name of this unknown magic is pear cultivation. Lacey clearly wasn't expecting this and asked, then how did he feel when this magic was used against him? He replied that he felt as if the blood in his entire body was concentrated in certain places. It was a painful sensation that was hard for him to describe. He thought about how he felt, and Lacey thought that in a certain sense, it was an unknown magic for the Demon King. Suddenly, Amu came into the room and said that she had only had suspicions during the day, but she did not think that she would be right. Lacey she turned around and thought that this was the royal knight she had seen earlier in the day. Amu said that she was seeing the legendary Demon King, a genius who has mastered all 4 elements. She never would have thought that she would see the demonic scum resurrect him. Lacey turned to her lord and said it was bad. Let him go quickly. At the same time, Amu attacked them, blowing the wind at them and knocking Lacey off her feet. Belmont turned around and asked if she was okay. She replied that she was fine, let him run away faster. Amu asked if they didn't think it was the right time to worry about others. Don't let them underestimate her air magic. Belmont had said that her magic level was good for children's entertainment, and now it was his turn. He stretched out his hand to attack, but nothing happened and he remembered that he couldn't use magic. Amu swung her sword, sending a powerful gust of wind at him, and he was thrown back. Lacey called out worriedly, and Belmont scratched his head and asked, "So this is a human body? It's too easy to throw." Amu said it was natural. When Lady Aaliyah sealed it, there wasn't even a shred of magic left in it. It looks like she's going to get a promotion soon. Lacey told Belmont that it was her fault, she should have properly concealed the magic power, now it only remains. Belmont interrupted her and said that she had just called them demonic scum. Have demons been treated like this all the time over the years? Lacey confirmed his words and said that even though the published law states that the demon race has the same status as other races, but most people like her refuse to accept their existence. Belmont smiled and said he understood. He looked at the statue of Eleusis and said it wasn't over yet. Lacey used magic and said that she had learned a lot of human magic over the years. She should be able to buy some time. Amu said it was over, she would chop them up and then deliver them to the town hall. Belmont looked at Lacey and thought this was a bad plan. Relying on these grains of strength, she would only turn into cannon fodder and die in vain. He has just woken up and cannot allow himself to be imprisoned again. Isn't the magic of the 4 great elements no use at all right now? He felt an unknown magic in his body and thought, should he use it? He called out to Lacey, and she immediately turned around. He grabbed her hand and pulled her to him, kissing her. That unknown magic began to form between them, and she called out to him in surprise. The magic activated and sparks began to radiate from Belmont's body. He said he thought he had succeeded. The only thing he had with him in these 50 years was the pear cultivation method. Amu swung her sword and asked if they were still there. On your feet. A powerful gust of wind flew straight at them, and Belmont stopped it with one hand. He used the force and told her to burn to the ground. At the same time, the magic power went straight at her and burned her clothes. She asked what kind of magic it was. He looked at his hand and said that it was the power that the hero used to seal it. Let her be happy that he didn't fully understand it yet, otherwise she would have already been burned alive. Amu exclaimed, so this was Lady Aaliyah's secret technique. How could a demonic scum be able to use such high-level magic? Belmont complained that the demons weren't trash at all. Amu's eyes widened in fear and she fell unconscious. Belmont called out to Lacey and she said she was here. He said that he was going to break the seal on the demons. She said, really? It is wonderful. He turned around and told her to take him to the place on the mainland with the most members of the opposite sex. She looked at him in surprise and he said that he was going to use the pear cultivation method to revive the demon race. Rose, a city named after the hero Aaliyah Rose. The city that was once the capital of the Demon King had turned into an extremely lively city under the rule of humans. If they have money, they can meet all their needs, every single one of them. They entered the House of Love, where girls of different races greeted their clients and held a conversation with them. One of the girls who surrounded Belmont brought him a cup and told him that she was asking him to try this special vitality-boosting tea. Another girl asked, did he know that snakes are best able to bind? Another girl grabbed his hand and asked if he would play stickman with her. Lacey covered her face in shame and thought that she needed to calm down. All of this is just to help Mr. Belmont regain his powers. The girl asked Belmont which of them he would choose. He replied that he would not choose. Lacey was surprised by his words and thought with a smile that really, how could the master have resorted to such a base method? Belmont said he needed everyone. The girls squealed with delight and led him into the room, telling him that their dear guest was indeed astute. Lacey was angry, and Belmont thought that he could compare the effect of this magic with people of different races. One of the girls took off his hood with the words that there was no need to wear a headdress inside. They saw its horns and were dumbfounded. The girl immediately took the cup of tea away from him, and the other girl put away the fruit. He was surprised, and they glared at them and chased them out of the place. The girl tusked in displeasure and said that she thought that a rich client came to them, but in fact it turned out to be demonic garbage. How unlucky they are. They headed back to the establishment and told them to get the hell out of here. Another girl said under her breath that she thought they had a young brother with money. Lacey, she called out to her master and asked, didn't she tell him not to take off his headdress? He replied that when he was the Demon King, others would help him change his wardrobe, it was just a habit. The demon girl who was leaning on the wall nearby laughed and said that she didn't think that she would ever see such a careless demon in her lifetime. In Rose, the only thing that remains for them, ordinary demons, is to survive on the roadsides. If they want to blame anyone, then let them blame the unfortunate Demon King. Lacey told her to stop talking nonsense. This has nothing to do with the Demon King. The girl laughed and asked if, after 50 years, there were still those who wanted to protect him. Belmont came up to her and she said, what's the matter? Is he running into trouble? Oni saw his piercing gaze and became agitated. He said that just now she was talking about ordinary demons, then what kind of demons can live a normal life here? She looked at him in surprise and wondered what was going on. Why did she feel like she couldn't cross him? She began to say, haltingly, that only those who have become students of St. Edmund's Academy can achieve this. The entrance exam is just 2 days away. After getting an answer, Belmont called out to Lacey and told her to go. The girl only told him not to tell her that he was going to take the exam. The demons don't have magic anymore, he doesn't stand a chance. Belmont replied that it wasn't her concern, the Demon King's mistakes would be corrected by the Demon King himself. 2 days later, the man said that they didn't have the qualifications to take the exam, so let them leave. They were surprised, and when they got out of the exam, they sat down by the fence and Lacey said that it turns out that in order for the demon to register, he must get a guarantee from a representative of the nobility. She turned to Belmont and asked if they could find another way. He mumbled to himself that he really wasn't good for anything, he was just trash with horns. He really is a disgrace to the entire demon race. Lacey was surprised and thought, isn't this the D status? The so-called D status is the highest degree of self-denial of the Demon King, which is triggered when he is unable to fulfill the promise or gets into a difficult situation. When the Demon King said that he would destroy the hero in 10 seconds, but ended up spending 11 seconds on it, he fell into D status. He had once said that the Demon King didn't need to brush his teeth, but eventually, when the tooth decay appeared, he fell into D status. In this state, the Demon King can only react to others using conditioned reflexes. At such a time, they should never disturb the master otherwise. At the same time, a force hit Belmont and sent him flying several meters back. Lacey called out to him in fright and ran up to him, asking how he was. The man who was standing in the front told Lady Alice, who was using magic, that she needed to stop being so headstrong. She said that next time, she wouldn't hold back. Let her pass immediately. This girl's name is Alice Rose. The man said that instead of taking the exams with the commoners, Master Ralph had prepared a more suitable path for her. During this time, Belmont recovered and Lacey she asked if he was alright. The man told Alice that let her be obedient and come back with him. This man's name is Roidzuma. Alice got angry and, using her magic again, said that she had said not to mention this person's name in front of her. A fire element magic circle appeared behind her, and she directed Phoenix Rain spells at Royd. He deflected her blows and said that it was useless even though she had outstanding magical talents among her peers, but it was too early for her to challenge him, a formidable wizard. She attacked him again, and he said that he could detect the direction of magic flows in advance and then perfectly avoid damage. He parried her blows again and said that besides, every magic projectile bounces off him in the most graceful arc. The magic projectile bounced off him and flew straight into Belmont's head. Lacey looked at him and said that the master had flown in again. Suddenly her eyes widened in surprise and Royd told Alice that they would end there, her attacks were fruitless. Let him take her with him and retrain her gracefully. At the same time, Belmont appeared in front of his face and hit him. There was an explosion and Royd fell to the ground exhausted, asking where did this imp come from. Lacey called out to her master and Alice was surprised by his strength. Belmont called Royd an idiot and told him not to hurt others when he was fighting someone. He walked up to him and told him to quickly apologize to him. He grabbed him by the clothes, and Lacey thought that if the Demon King in State D was disturbed, he would be enraged. Alice exclaimed, "Who is he? Let him go now." He gave her a disgruntled look and said there was another one just like it. But suddenly his gaze changed to surprise when he saw the image of Elias in her. Alice called him a scoundrel and said he still dared to stare at her. She went up to him and asked if he hadn't heard her. She ordered him to let him go. She grabbed his shoulder, and at the same time, a strange thought flashed through her mind. She thought, what is this feeling? Belmont was surprised and asked what was the matter. Has the pear cultivation magic activated? Sparks started to come out of his hand and Alice told him to let it go quickly. Belmont said that the magic energy is about to burst out. Lacey squeezed between them and pushed them apart. She looked at Belmont and asked, is he okay? He caught his breath and said that more or less, it looked like this strange magic was activated. Lacey approached him and whispered that she was a descendant of the hero who sealed the Demon King. Her name was Alice Rose. Belmont looked surprised, and Alice panted and asked who they were, after all. Belmont walked over to her and stood gravely in front of her. He looked at her face and said that he had a familiar feeling, but that's all. He estimated the size of her breasts and remembered Aaliyah. After comparing the dimensions, he asked, so it really wasn't her. He was thinking too much. At the same time, Alice gave him a sharp slap in the face and Lacey apologized. Due to the fact that demons have a poor memory for faces, they sometimes have to recognize others by their physique. Alice said they would forget about it. The two of them are called Belle and Lacey, right? Since they don't have a guarantee, they can't take the exam, right? Lacey confirmed her words and said that if they had resolved everything, then it was time for them. She grabbed Belmont's clothes and told them that they shouldn't linger in this place. Alice said they wouldn't leave so quickly. They haven't found out everything yet. What strange magic did he use on her? Didn't the demons lose their magic? She thought that even though it was a surprise attack, he had so easily found a gap in Royd's defense. Belmont turned around and said that it wasn't magic, but his unique ability. Lacey called out to him and told him not to talk about it. Belmont said it was because Lacey was very scared, thinking that he would give away his identity, but Belmont said that he was a descendant of incubi. Lacey let out a sigh of relief and thought that this was expected of the master. He has a great resourcefulness. Alice asked if he was an incubus, so there are also men among them. Belmont confirmed her story and said that when incubi touch women, they experience different sensations. At the same time, his own source of magic is also there. Alice interrupted him and said that was enough. She awkwardly said that in any case, they had done her a favor. The credo of her family obliges to respond to good with good, so she will do the same. Some time later, at the Academy of the Holy Hero Edmund, the man asked his subordinate, did all the applicants pass? The guy confirmed his words and said that they can start the exam now. Lacey ran up to them and asked them to wait. The man chuckled and said it was them again. He'd made it very clear that they couldn't do anything without a guarantee. Belmont handed him a piece of paper. The man was surprised and said that this is the magic signature of Rod Rose. How did they manage it? Alice came up to them and told the examiner that she also wanted to register. He asked in surprise, is she a descendant of the hero, Alice Rose? She didn't answer and asked if there was a problem with the signature. The examiner replied that of course there is no problem. He asks them to go inside. The doors opened and they entered the academy grounds. Everyone present said to look, it's Alice Fleming. Is she also entering this semester? Were the demons following her? Why did Mistress Alice bring demons with her? Such an abomination. Lacey thought that even though they managed to get here, she had a feeling that they were going to have a difficult journey ahead of them. A girl came to the center and said it was so unexpected. Lady Alice also came to participate in the exam. This girl's name is Newt, and she's a beastman. Alice said that the main troublemaker was right there. Newt ran a finger along her chin and asked why she was so indifferent. They had such a fun childhood. Alice replied that it was only because of the bad karma of the previous generation. Newt looked behind her and when she saw the demons, she said that she suddenly brought demons with her. Are they her servants? Alice replied that they were just recent acquaintances and it was better for her not to approach the guy. He had the blood of incubi in him. Newt ignored her and headed toward the demons, while Alice looked around in surprise. Newt hugged Belmont to her chest and asked, is he an incubus? It's the first time she's seen them, and he's grown quite cute. Lacey was surprised and thought this strange magic didn't work. Newt said she wanted him to be her pet. Alice pushed Belmont away from her and told her that if she was in heat, let her go back to where she came from. Don't let her defile the exam hall. Newt replied that she was just joking, how conscientious she was. Suddenly, a girl approached Belmont's back and sniffed him, saying that he smelled good. Newt complained that she found it first. Alice looked at the girl and said it was Roxanne. The elf put her arm around Belmont's head and asked, is he really an incubus? Does it smell too special? He said that incubi do. Alice was indignant and told her to stop. Roxanne drew attention to Alice and said that she didn't think she was hiding such good material to study. Besides, her older brother had already entered the academy last year. Wasn't Rod Fleming content with just one place? Newt licked her lips and told Alice that she, too, should be reminded not to forget about the pact made in the past between the heroes. Alice told them to stop. She has her own plans and they have nothing to do with her family. All three girls looked at each other, and Belmont asked Lassie if the three of them knew each other. She replied that the three of them were the descendants of the heroes who went on a campaign against the Demon King. Belmont asked why, so it wasn't just that Ilya. Lacey said that the squad that went on a campaign against the Demon King consisted of 4 members. Of course, Ilya's achievements were the greatest, which is why there was a rift between her family and the families of the other heroes. They have a rather delicate relationship. A second later, sparks began to sparkle in the center of the hall. The entrance turned around and a man emerged from the sparks. He greeted all the applicants who showed up for the entrance exam at St. Edmund's Academy. His name is Edward, and he's going to be their examiner today. The delighted students exclaimed that it was Teacher Edward. He is the most popular candidate for the post of Archbishop this year. His appearance is a top-level spatial magic, it's so cool. Lacey said that they had chosen such a high-ranking person for the role of examiner. She's afraid that by relying on the current magic power, they won't be able to. Belmont interrupted her and told her to relax. Even though he still hadn't figured out the activation conditions, however, after 2 activations of paired cultivation, he was able to regain control of some of his strength. He had accumulated power in his hand and said that she could see what degree his power had reached. Lacey shielded her eyes from the bright light and thought that it was the glow from the master's magic power. His powers had indeed returned, but the spark in his hand went out and nothing happened. She called out to him awkwardly, and he said that it looked like he could only control so much right now. In addition, the stability of the control also leaves much to be desired. If he weakens his concentration a little, then the magic immediately disappears. Lacey thought it was too little, he was also bragging about it. That's too bad, with so much magic. There's no way the master can pass the exam, so there's only one thing left. She called out to him and grabbed his arm sharply, pulling him closer to her. He asked her what she was doing. She pulled out the potion flask and told him to take it. Belmont said they'd never used one before. Lacey, she said, that's right, it's dragon saliva. After using it, its magic energy will increase to the required level. However, this has a short-lived effect. He would need to drink it discreetly before the exam started. He abruptly pulled away from her and apologized to her, saying that he couldn't do such a thing. She exclaimed, "Why?" He replied that it was because it was wrong to cheat on the exam. She opened her mouth in shock and said that now was not the time to attach importance to it. The rebirth of the entire demon race depends on him. Belmont thought about it and called out to her. She said, "What is it?" He said that even if the demons had lost their innate magic, he still didn't think they were inferior to other races. He put his hand on her shoulder and told her not to worry, he would definitely pass this exam. She smiled and said that she was too worried. She put the potion away and thought that she really had completely forgotten what their king was like. Suddenly, a hand reached into her chest and pulled out a flask of potion. Lacey thought it was Belmont and said he didn't need it, why was he here again? She looked at Belmont, who shrugged and realized that it wasn't his hand. Lacey gave a small cry and covered her chest with her hands. Belmont turned to look at Edward, whose hand had been moved by a magic circle. He looked at the potion in his hand and asked, "Is this a means to enhance magic power? She dares to cheat in the middle of an exam. For that, he would expel her." All the entrants turned in her direction and Leia's magic circle appeared in front of her. She called out to Belmont and said she was feeling weird. The magic circle was getting bigger. She started to disappear and asked what was going on. Let him help her. Belmont called out to her in fright and Edward told him to relax. He just chased the demonic scum off the exam floor. How ugly it was. It had been so long since there were any demons among the examinees. He wanted to pay special attention to them, but it turned out that one of them decided to cheat. After all, how could one not call the demons a hopeless race? Words were heard from all sides saying that these idiots had clearly overestimated themselves. What clowns they are. Demons who thought they could be heroes. By coming here, they had once again disgraced themselves. Someone laughed and asked who would let them become heroes. Newt heard this and said they were nothing but lying down punchers. Belmont said nothing in response to the insults, and Edward asked if he had anything to say. He only kicked her out of the exam area. Or maybe he wants to go after her. Belmont said that when it was over, he would make him apologize to her. Edward said it was nonsense. Was it unfair for him to kick out an examinee who cheated? Belmont said not for that, but for calling her trash. Edward didn't say anything and thought with a grin that he was a non-entity who couldn't feel his feet under him. If Lady Rose hadn't brought him here, he would have wished he hadn't dared to look him straight in the eye. He said that this scum has already taken up a lot of their time. They will immediately start the academy entrance exam. A magic circle appeared under the entrance feet, which moved them to a special platform. Someone asked what this place is. How did they get here? Someone replied that it was the dragon wing cliff behind the academy. Spatial magic is incredible. Edward went to the center and said that the exam was extremely simple. Each of them only needs to pass through this bridge. With a wave of his hand, a magic bridge that connected the cliff to the academy's walls appeared. He looked at the bridge and said that all he had to do was go to the other side. The applicant was asked, just like that. There's clearly a catch here. Edward said the time limit is 30 minutes. The first 100 examinees who successfully complete the task will be enrolled in the academy. Well, now the certification begins. The entrant began to move forward on the bridge and Belmont felt something, thinking that there was clearly something wrong with the bridge deck. Although, the bridge looks quite smooth. He looked at his foot, which was stuck in the bridge and which of the applicants said that he was stuck. Other examinees looked at the sticky slime on their feet and asked what they had stepped on. What a sticky mess that is. They began to be drawn deeper into the bridge and some girl said that in order to continue moving, they need to maintain internal balance. Edward looked at their attempts and thought that this bridge was made of huge slime blocks. If the magic power is lacking, they will fall deeper and deeper. If they don't have enough control, they will hardly be able to make even a move. Alice smeared herself all over with slime and said it was such a sticky mess. Newt easily brushed past her and told her that she didn't seem to have the proper magical control. Alice was surprised and asked, did she just pass? Newt turned around and said that she was going to move on and let her watch out so that she didn't fail the enrollment. Alice exclaimed in displeasure, but what does it matter to her? Edward thought that the descendants of heroes didn't seem to have much of a problem, but the demonic scum didn't seem to have much of a problem. Belmont was completely submerged in the slime and thought that with his current magic power, he wouldn't be able to break free, but that didn't mean he wouldn't have a way. He used his power and emerged from the slime. Edward was surprised and thought, did he turn the surrounding slimes into liquid? It takes a high amount of control power to do this, but even so, with his magic power so low, he won't stop sinking. But Belmont did exactly what he didn't expect and swam forward. Edward wondered if he could still do that. How did he not take this into account? Although not quite, because even in the academy only a couple of teachers have such a power of control. He grinned and mentally told him not to be happy ahead of time. Some girl said that although she was struggling, she was still making a little progress. It only takes a little perseverance. At the same time, slime tentacles sprouted out of the bridge and the examinees found themselves on the other side of the bridge. One of them asked why everything had suddenly turned upside down. The tentacles grabbed the girl, and Belmont turned as a shadow loomed over him. The slimes grabbed all the examinees and one of them asked, so these slimes were alive? Don't let them tell you that the entire bridge is made up of live slimes. Edward thought that ordinary slimes were just weak magical creatures. But if several of them are combined into one, then they can cause headaches even for heroes with long experience. Therefore, only candidates with outstanding skills are able to pass this test. But those who couldn't will fall into the spatial circle under the bridge and fly out of the academy at the same hour. Newt, who was shackled by slime, asked how old she was. Wait. She looked at slime and asked, what is it? Is that all he can do? She held out her hand and said, which means it's her turn. Slime was surprised and she used an animal technique, striking with the beast's claws. She smiled and said that the size wasn't enough to satisfy her. Roxanne took a step toward the slimes, and they pounced on her. She concentrated and used her magic shield, and the slimes were surprised and started hitting her shield in exasperation. She waved her hand and said she was sick of it. At the same time, she tore the slime into pieces, and at the same time, another slime was reaching for the fleeing girl. Alice created a fire element magic circle and used fire sunset magic on the slime, dissolving it. The girl looked at Alice and thanked her. Alice sat down next to her and told her that don't let her misunderstand her, they just fell in her way, that's all. She thought that the person who came up with this test was completely devoid of any decency. Edward said that this was to be expected from the descendants of heroes. If things continue like this, that demon will definitely fly out. As expected, with such a low magic power, there's nothing to dream about. But suddenly he stopped and was surprised to see Belmont sitting on one of the slimes and shouted, how is this possible? Belmont patted Slime and said in another language that he was a good kid, obedient. Edward wondered if the rogue could speak the slime language. Wasn't their language lost several decades ago? Moreover, it takes a huge amount of magic power to subdue a slime. But with his powers, Belmont stuck out his tongue at him, and Edward saw the magic circle and thought, is this a speech circle? He used all of his residual magic and focused it to use the speech circle. Was this demon capable of such magical manipulation? He chuckled and thought that he was the examiner here, so it was up to him to choose the degree of difficulty of the tests. He took out a flask of liquid and thought that it was time for the slimes under him to get his reagent. Right after that, the slimes became vicious and started to turn a dark color. The dark tentacles reached out for Belmont, and he quickly jumped back to avoid the blow. He landed a short distance away and looked at the slimes that were beginning to gather together. Belmont saw a dark slime in front of him and thought, have they transformed? Was this the guy's doing? Slime attacked him and Belmont thought it was bad, his legs were still moving. Stuck inside the bridge, he can't dodge. Edward shouted at him to get out of his sight. This wasn't the place he should have come to. At the same time, Slime's tentacles were scalded by fire and Alice appeared in front of Belmont. He looked at her and she waved her hand to complete the attack. She quickly turned around and asked, is he okay? He asked in surprise, did she save him? Alice opened her mouth slightly, realizing what it looked like from the outside, and quickly turned away and replied that she just removed the obstacles from her path on the bridge. Did he think too much of himself? Edward thought it was strange. Why did Lady Alice attach such importance to this unusual demon? The trouble is, if she gets hurt, it won't do him any good. He'll have to get the reagent back. The slime got even angrier and started to devour the other slime creatures around it. Belmont and Alice looked at it and said it was the thing that had swallowed all the other slimes. Edward's magic circle broke and he thought, what's going on? Spatial magic doesn't work. Was it all because of this potion? Alice conjured a fire element magic circle and directed the Phoenix Rain spell at slime. The fire projectiles collided with the slime but did no damage, and Alice asked how this was possible. Was slime gradually able to adapt to her fire magic? Belmont said it was useless. This monster had consumed a forbidden potion called Black Python Blood. Alice asked in surprise, Black Python Blood? He replied that this potion could restore 1% of the apogee power of a magical creature. Alice exclaimed, 1%. The slime became so strong just because of 1%. Belmont said that this shouldn't normally be the case, but slimes are a special category of magical creatures. They are able to merge with each other and thus combine their power. And the thing in front of them is a clot of a large number of slimes. Alice used fire magic again, but the slime remained intact and she said that her magic could no longer cause damage. Belmont asked, hadn't he told her it was useless? She interrupted him and exclaimed, all he can do is make snide remarks on the sidelines. Belmont said there were ways to beat it, of course, but since she was here, he might just use one of them. She asked what method he was talking about. After all, it can already be faster. At the same time, Belmont touched her and, pulling her to him by the waist, looked her straight in the eye and she was surprised. He kissed her and thought that this was a method called pair cultivation magic. He held out his hand, directing magic at the monster, and Alice froze in surprise. They continued their kiss and Belmont tried to attack, but nothing happened. He said it was weird, why didn't it work? Alice got angry and clenched her hand into a fist, hitting him. There was a massive explosion and she said he was a dirty pervert. How can he think obscenities at a time like this? Belmont wondered how he got the feeling that this was the girl he should be more afraid of than the monster in front of them. Alice said with displeasure that even if he wanted to do it so badly, now was clearly not the time. Now let him go and find the academy teacher to help them. Belmont stood up and said that with her powers, when he returned, she might already be dead. She hit him again and said he was so annoying, let him die instead. After Belmont fell to the ground, he asked Alice why she was doing this even though she might die. She looked at him questioningly and stopped, then replied with a fierce look, protecting the people is the duty of a hero. He looked at her questioningly and wondered, hadn't she also said something similar? Was he also a member of the people in her understanding? At this moment, the monster behind Alice began to rise up and approach her. She turned around in bewilderment and fright and abruptly began to take the monster's blow, thanks to the use of her magic powers. She created a bright magic shield and tried to hold off the attack. At this moment, Belmont watched with interest while Alice tried to defend herself with thoughts that things were bad. But the magic power of her fire barrier wasn't enough, she couldn't dodge. At this moment, the monster penetrated through her protective barrier. Belmont jumped up from his seat and hugged Alice, helped her escape from the blow, which caused a big explosion and the two of them flew away in an embrace. When they fell, Alice started coughing loudly because of the dust. Belmont was right on top of her, and she looked at him with embarrassment and said, why didn't he run away? This wasn't the time for him to play hero. He spoke back to her, looking at her without taking his eyes off her. If the duty of a hero is to protect the people, then this duty also includes the protection of demons. He probably understood this. She answered him without moving, right. He continued to express his thoughts, so he definitely needs to pass this exam and become a hero. She looked at him questioningly, then abruptly turned away with a face reddened with shame and said, okay. She understood how much more pressure he was going to put on her. The monster once again began to approach them from behind. Belmont sensed and spun around with a sinister look, and Alice screamed in fright. Continuing to lie on the ground, everything was gone. They no longer had any ways to restrain the attacks of this monster. He replied to her, it's not necessary, they don't need to hold back these attacks. She shouted back at him, what the hell is he talking about right now? He grabbed her hand, and she looked at him in disbelief and asked in an uncertain voice, did he forget what situation they were in again? There's clearly something wrong with his head. He asked her to be quiet and said, calm down, they need to concentrate. She looked closely at their clasped hands and saw a bright magical flame, which surprised her and she wondered what was going on. She felt as if all her magic was accumulating in her palm. Belmont said, that graceful old man was right, her innate magic level is very high, but her ability to control this magic is not enough yet. She asked him a question with a frightened expression, shouting loudly, what did he do? He replied that he was only going to use her erratic magic flows in a more efficient way. She was surprised by these words and couldn't say anything, but he in turn looked up at the sky, simultaneously turning into a monster, and thought, so what if the magic of pair cultivation didn't work? So what if his magic energy level is low right now? As long as he has his magic control power and is a genius of magic, he will always find a way to overcome obstacles, because he is the Demon King. Half of his body was already covered in a bright magic layer, and one of his eyes lit up with a bright red color. He turned to the monster and looked into the creature's bright blue magic light mouth, which was already heading towards him. He pointed his hand towards the monster and used the demonic flame magic, as well as a spell called Balrog Power. His magic jet pierced through the monster and split the creature in two with incredible agility. At such a crucial moment, Alice ran closer to him and clung to his body in fright. As he continued to observe the consequences of his actions, he suddenly realized that some of his strength had returned to him once again. After a while, they found themselves in the castle, where a lot of people around Newt and Roxanne were shouting various expressions. Someone was very happy that they were able to pass. Some guy shouted to the others that they would probably start announcing the results soon. Other guys agreed with this and added to these words that it was quite dangerous. Someone was lucky that she ran in advance. At that moment, Edward wondered what he should do. Facing such a strong monster, they definitely couldn't survive if the Rose family found out about this. But before he could think it through, the surrounding people's gazes turned in one direction and someone shouted that someone was coming. It was Mistress Alice. Edward was very surprised by this, which made him smile and wonder what's going on. Thank the gods, so not only was he able to get rid of that demon, but suddenly his thoughts were interrupted when he saw Alice and Belmont walking closer, holding hands and hugging. This moment really surprised him and he wondered in surprise, so this guy is still alive. As they drew closer, Belmont sighed and said, "They're here." The surrounding people started shouting for everyone to watch. It's Mistress Alice. Mistress Alice also helped the demon pass the tests. Are there really demons that can pass the tests? How could this happen? The Rose family's young mistress suddenly teamed up with a demon. When Belmont heard these words, his face took on a sad look and he thought, this is just a curse. How much contempt the demon race had to endure. Even though he passed the test, they still treat him with prejudice. Alice also reacted to these statements with anger. She gritted her teeth and said in a trembling voice from rage several times that she would kill him. As soon as she regained her strength, she would definitely kill this scoundrel. Belmont looked at her in surprise and thought, okay, it doesn't matter. First you just need to find a way to survive. Edward turned to all the surrounding kids and said they all did a good job and successfully passed the entrance exam. However, as for the two of them, only Lady Alice passed the exam. But as for the demon, due to fraud, he was refused admission. These words surprised Belmont very much and he shouted, "What?" The other guys had the same reaction on their faces and started discussing, what scam? So this demon cheated. Someone said that he knew it, otherwise how else would a demon be able to pass the Hero Academy exam? Alice's face turned purple and she lowered her gaze to the floor. Belmont began to resent this accusation and shouted, "Stop, let him wait." Alice also asked to wait for Edward and began to explain that he was always there for her, and although it was difficult for her to accept this, she was able to pass this exam largely thanks to him. She can vouch for the fact that he really did not cheat. He looked at her with a dumbfounded look due to the suddenness of her remarks, and Edward replied with a sinister smile, "Lady Alice, she's still too young, and the demons, one of whom is currently with her, were once not such friendly creatures, since the demons are so named for a reason, and this is all because each of them has an incredible innate magical potential. Once the Demon King, relying on his numerous army, raged throughout the continent, thanks to her grandmother, Lady Elijah Rose, his power was sealed, and the source of the innate magical power of the demons was cut off from them. Only in that case, they calmed down. So today's demons are completely unable to concentrate enough magic power because the source of their magic power was cut off from them. If he hadn't cheated, there was no way he would have been able to pass this exam. Since he was currently serving as an examiner's inspector, it was his duty to impose a penalty for cheating. After saying this, he created a magic barrier in front of his face. His eyes lit up with a bright magical light and he was about to perform some kind of maneuver. But at that moment, Belmont became very angry and punched him in the face, causing him to fly to the side and fall straight to the ground. The surrounding people were surprised by this incident, but did not react in any way and only watched it. Belmont started shouting at him with a haughty expression. Coming a little closer, all he can do is talk his tongue out all day, speaking to the point, he's just making up unsubstantiated guesses. Edward was lying on the ground in bewilderment, his face was bruised from the impact. Suddenly he jumped up, clutched his cheek and shouted at him in incredible anger and confusion. Hesitating, unable to find the words to answer, he dared to hit the examiner himself. Belmont replied with confidence in his own abilities and words, if he didn't join the academy just because of his dislike of demons, then he should just rip off his head. At this moment, Alice was watching the two boys' behavior and thought, in fact, even though this henchman has no magic at all, his power of magical control has reached incredible heights. Not only is it able to break the opponent's magic circle, but it can also borrow someone else's magic power. Edward, with a huge swollen bruise on his face, started to tell him angrily what a scoundrel he was. He was just a worthless demon. How dare he do this to him? At that moment, a person behind Edward started to approach him and said with a chuckle, "It looks like they have an unusual student this year." It was a girl with a short dark haircut who spoke. Even she wanted to come out and greet him. The other guys were surprised to see this girl among them, and with dumbfounded looks, they began to guess, could it really be the headmaster of the academy? The headmaster of the academy decided to attend their exam in person. She walked indifferently past Edward and came closer to Belmont and Alice, then turned to Lady Rose and noted that they had not seen each other for a long time. She had grown up in that time. She bowed after her words and agreed with her, then added to her words that she was really grateful for her concern. Edward walked into the woods and asked the headmaster if she could just leave the case to him. She answered him, turning to look at him angrily. She thinks she just said that she came to see. Beads of sweat appeared on his face from the fear he experienced, and he began to apologize to her and said that he really was to blame for this. The principal took another step towards Belmont and continued the conversation. And so, student Bell, so he did cheat after all. She asked the question directly, and the whole area was lit up with a bright light from magic, and a trace of a monster appeared above her. The headmistress of the academy was Karen Linnon, who is a Grand Master. Edward stood behind her with a startled expression and thought, this feeling of pressure. This is the magical pressure of the youngest headmaster in the history of St. Edmund's Academy, Grand Master Karen Linnon. Alice looked at her with the same puzzled expression, and Belmont, in turn, with a confident and absolutely calm expression on his face, said to her in response, no, he did not cheat. Karen said to him, a little embarrassed, that's right, then she asks him to follow her. They entered a room with impossibly high ceilings, crowded with people at their desks. When they appeared there, Alice was very frightened, looking at the floor, where they arrived too abruptly and everything around turned to dust. Alice looked around and wondered what kind of place it was. The room was so huge, and the people were so unfamiliar, that they stood in absolute disbelief. Karen spoke with a smile on her face, welcoming them to the Academy's highest authority, the St. Edmund's Academy Council. She is the director of this academy named Karen Linnon. She spread her hands and said in addition, in order to prove that they were qualified for admission, she prepared an additional exam for the two of them. The kids looked at her questioningly and wondered if they were going to have an extra exam. Belmont said indignantly, it's obvious that they passed the entrance exam normally, why do we need to arrange an additional exam for them? Karen told him that the reason for this was quite simple, it was all because the two of them had broken the Academy's rules. The Academy of St. Edmund is a school of magic of the highest category, founded by great heroes who went on a campaign against the Demon King. In these walls, students have the qualifications to learn the highest magic and magic techniques that only exist on the continent, which is why there are unspoken rules according to which they do not accept demons, and also accept only one representative from the Great One's houses in the same generation. They looked at her with dumbfounded expressions, and suddenly Alice gritted her teeth in anger, and Belmont said, since these rules are unspoken, how can they be considered real rules? Alice looked at him questioningly, and he continued to say, after passing the certification, a student can enter the academy, this is an official rule, isn't it? At this moment, all the surrounding people who were in this huge room began to whisper among themselves, discussing this situation. And Alice also whispered to Belmont, when he speaks, he should watch his tone a little, she doesn't want him to drag her to the bottom with him. He spread his hands and told her back that he just told her the way things really were. Karen laughed and said that it was true, he shouldn't worry, this time the extra exam was an emergency. It wouldn't involve anything complicated. First of all, she had a question for both of them, why did they want to go to this academy? Alice replied with confidence in her eyes, she aspires to become a hero who can protect the people, just like her grandmother Elijah. Karen scoffed at this and said it was wonderful, then turned to Belmont and asked him what he, Bell's student, thought of it. He replied that it was actually very simple, since times had changed, it meant that in this new era, he could allow the demon to gain equal rights like other races and equal living conditions on this continent. Suddenly, someone from the audience started shouting, what a disgrace, is it possible that in the position that they were given by the demon, they still lack equality? A greedy, low-grade tribe. Does he still have the nerve to talk about equality? What nonsense is this? Has he already forgotten about the atrocities they committed? Karen scoffed at the reaction of the people in the hall and said, still laughing, one wants to be a hero like the ones who went on a campaign against the Demon King, and the other wants a rebirth for the demons. How interesting that is. After which, she calmed down, looked them straight in the eye, and said with a smile on her face, the more she learns, the more she looks forward to their upcoming performance. At this moment, she pointed her finger in their direction and two golden rings appeared in front of their faces. She began to explain that in front of them are the Damocles rings created by Lady Elijah. If the wearer of one of these rings is recognized as a ring, it will be a direct proof of having the ability to become a hero. As for their situation, only the strongest two of them will be recognized. Belmont asked her, as he continued to observe the ring's behavior, what would happen to someone that the ring didn't recognize. Karen replied with a straight face, the ring will completely absorb the magical powers of the person it doesn't recognize and then pass judgment. Alice was very frightened by her words and thought with fright, so it turns out that someone who is not recognized can die. Belmont asked her, didn't her grandmother create these rings? Didn't she know that? She looked away with a feeling of shame and anger, and said in a trembling and uncertain voice she thinks it beneath her dignity to know about such useless things. At that moment, she wondered, apart from Royd, if that person would have let her know more about her family. It's a curse. Karen spread her hands again and said, in general, things are like this. The one who puts on the ring and survives will immediately pass. Well, what will they do? They still have time to change their minds. Alice looked down in frustration and wondered if she was going to get a confession. At that moment, Belmont turned to her and asked her what was the matter. Was she really afraid? If she wants to become like that woman, then she can't avoid it at the moment. She turned away from him again, her face flushed with anger, and said, what does he know about this? A minor incubus. Who else is going to get around this? At that moment, Karen interrupted their conversation and said, it seems that neither of them changed their minds, then they can start. The boys simultaneously took the rings in their hands and put them on their fingers, then froze in anticipation, and at this moment Alice looked questioningly at her hand and asked the question, why is nothing happening? Does this mean that it has already passed? At this moment, Belmont's hand started to be killed by the dark magic power and he said with fright, no, something is going to come out of this thing. At this moment, both of them started to have such dark magic powers appear and come out of their rings, rising up. After which this dark magic powers penetrated their bodies right into their chests, and they were dumbfounded when they saw that a huge incredible creature with a sword in his hand formed out of the ring and said, Belmont, this is the ring of judgment, and already fumbling in his heart, he must allow him to bring his weak, self-willed, greedy, sinful and depraved soul to his judgment. Belmont chuckled at these words and said, nothing, but I'm a magic ring, still dare to show my opinion. The creature said to him with a malicious look, what an impudent fellow he is, he's just a true madman. Well, if so, then this is in full measure, but suddenly the thoughts of this creature abruptly stopped and it realized that something was wrong with the soul of this guy. At this point, Belmont's magical powers appeared behind this creature, which asked the question, does it now recognize it? The creature from the ring was dumbfounded and at that moment, everything evaporated. Karen expressed her opinion after what she saw. It was interesting, it seems that the ring recognized it. At this moment, their gaze turned towards the trembling Alice, who was making some strange moans, and suddenly the dark forces spoke to her in a terrifying voice. The daughter of the Rose family unexpectedly turned out to be a carrier of the fire element. What a difficulty. After giving birth to the young lady, his wife's health was getting worse every day, and there was a huge gap between her magic talents and her older brothers. Lady Alice, she just has to agree to this marriage. Why did he have such a daughter? Karen continued to watch curiously and said, things don't seem to be going so smoothly here. Apparently, the ring is going to completely absorb her magic power. At this moment, the creature that came out of the ring swung its sword at Alice, who fell to the ground. But Belmont tried to protect her and directed his magic powers in the direction of this creature, from which not a single scratch remained on this creature. Belmont continued to stand there, puzzled, and Karen said, I don't think his amateur magic is any good. He should listen to her, young disciple. In this world there are a huge number of unspoken rules, hostility, traditions, discrimination, and so on. For someone who wants to be a hero, the first step is to accept it. At this moment, Alice looked in their direction and said with a desperate expression, she's fine, he shouldn't have interfered here. Belmont took a step toward her and said he didn't understand the phrase at all, that anyone who didn't have enough power to be recognized couldn't become a hero. Anyone who fails to become a hero will be sentenced. Alice looked at him questioningly, and he came closer to her, put his arm around her shoulder, pointed his hand towards the monster, and protected her from the creature's attack by stopping the sword with his hand. At that moment, a kind of struggle began between him and the creature, which both girls began to follow with curiosity and wonder because of this. Belmont suddenly spoke up. In fact, the rules of heroes is to impose their worldview on others. He apologizes, but he still feels that protecting the girl in front of him is very valuable. Alice was saddened by everything that was happening. Tears came to her eyes and she said, what a fool he is. At this moment, his entire body shone with a bright light. He was dumbfounded, and suddenly with a frightened expression, he thought, this is the magic of pair cultivation. An incredible magical connection was formed between him and the creature, which illuminated the entire area with a bright light, but after a moment, the creature evaporated and only a strong dust remained. Karen clapped her hands and said, that was pretty good, just brilliant. It looks like they've both passed this test and she's congratulating them on enrolling at St. Edmund's Academy. The guys were surprised by these words and could not immediately react, but suddenly a realization came to them. They hugged and were glad that they finally came to this, how much trouble was associated with this. Suddenly Alice noticed Belmont's hand on her shoulder and snapped at him angrily, how much longer does he plan to hug her, you pervert? The next day, the beginning of the semester began. At the entrance to the academy, there was a sign saying welcome new entrants to St. Edmund's Academy. Belmont was standing near this sign with Lacey and asked her a question, is she okay after yesterday? She replied, yes, she was only transported outside of the academy, but it's nothing compared to this. She can feel the strong fluctuations in the magic power of the students around her. It seems that everyone who has entered is bursting with enthusiasm on their first day of school. Belmont averted his gaze and spoke back to her, and not only that, but she also missed the most important point. He was already dressed in the standard academy uniform, and suddenly Lakesy looked at something in surprise and shouted, "What is this, master?" Belmont straightened his arm to the side, pointed his finger somewhere, and asked her to look at it. There. He pointed at the surrounding girls with incredibly beautiful forms, then grabbed the back of his head and said, still beaming with joy, "With such a huge variety of the opposite sex, he could easily crack the magic of pair cultivation, and he didn't even need to travel around the world." Lacey replied in confusion. For some reason his words give her more concern than joy. While he was distracted, looking around at all the girls, she thought sadly, after all, this is all for the sake of reviving the demon race, so there's nothing to be done about it. Belmont reflected that he was really interested in who would end up in the same group as him. At that moment, Lacey handed him a book with both male and female symbols on it and asked him to take it, master. He took the book in his hands, opened it a crack, and wondered what it was. In the book, it was written that this guide is impure for communicating with the opposite sex, and there were also questions such as, what do dwarf girls like? How can you excite a beastman girl? Just one book will allow him to reach absolute heights in communication with the opposite sex. Lacey looked away in embarrassment and said, this book was thrown away by the older generation of demons, and she is sure that it will be useful to him to some extent. He looked at it carefully and thought, although he doesn't understand everything here, but he is amazed at how much Lakesy is willing to give for the sake of demon rebirth. At this moment, she said to him excitedly, Master, the main thing for him right now is to study diligently here, and Lakesy will support him outside. He replied to her as he continued flipping through the book, yes, she shouldn't worry about anything, nothing can stop him. After a while, he went inside the academy building and thought to himself, to collect so many things secretly, Lakesy really tried very hard for this, she should be calm, he would never fail her expectations. If he had to, then for the sake of reviving the demons, he would pair cultivate with all the girls who ended up here, he should put aside his indecision. He opened the doors to room 2, which was filled with a lot of hot guys. They looked at him with a smile, and one of them chuckled and said to the others, so this is the only demon who could pass the exam. The other guy said with a smile, I wonder if since they are in the same group now, why not play with him? Someone shouted at him not to even think about it, because he was the first to notice it. He closed the door with words of apology that he had confused the audience, but in response he was shouted that he did not mix anything up, and the academy boys and girls are divided into separate groups. At that moment, a teacher was in one of the classrooms of the academy in front of a lot of students. He turned to them and said that he welcomes all incoming students here, and at this time the academy still adheres to its best traditions. With the exception of mandatory courses and activities, they do not adhere to the system of dividing boys and girls into separate groups. Belmont sat at one of the desks and reflected that he hadn't even bothered to find out such an elementary question. It seemed that his thinking abilities didn't even reach the slimes. It had a D status. The teacher continued to speak, and now he asks the representative of the new group, Racket Field, to give a speech. A fair-haired boy rose up from among the boys after his words with a sinister expression on his face. He was the Count's son. Belmont looked at him more carefully and thought, and really, the son of an earl should prove himself well. Racket started walking down the auditorium straight to the center, and people around him were wondering, is this Field? Could this really be the young master of the Field family? His father is the first rich man. The skill of summoning their kind is even more incredible, and at one time, it didn't leave the demons a chance. The status of this family is not inferior to the founding heroes. He stood in the center of the classroom and thought as he looked at the surrounding students, what can they admire from the bottom of their hearts? Commoners. After a while, the teacher thanked him for his speech, student representative Racket, and asked him to take a seat. He wondered if they might consider it a great honor to hear him speak, a horde of ants. After all, among this set of students, only Alice Rose is able to compare with him in position and only she, but during the entrance exams she was defamed by this vile demon. He should wait, so he will not leave him so easily. He looked directly into Belmont's eyes with such a sinister look, and he noticed it and wondered why he was glaring at him like that. At this moment, he recalled his recent conversation with Lakesy and thought, since this is the case, then a light smile will suit him this time. He smiled in his face, as he was only able to give him a dismissive grin in return. This grin surprised Racket very much and he was very angry. His face was covered with sweat from anger and anxiety and he wondered what kind of business this is. It's a smile, no matter how you look at it. This guy is clearly threatening him. It's a curse. How did he get such a strong pressure in his gaze? After a while, one of the academy students addressed young Master Racket with a polite tone and said, at noon, if it's convenient for him, would you like to have lunch together? Another guy also spoke to him from the other side of his shoulder. Young Master Racket, is he interested in magical horse riding? If so, he can join their club without passing the test. Racket closed his eyes in anger and thought that this was a curse, that he was a member of the Field family, that he was a role model, that he had to stand up to it outright. At that moment, he slammed his hands down on the table and both guys flew away from him in horror out of fright and looked at him with dumbfounded eyes. He abruptly started down the auditorium again, approaching Belmont, who was minding his own business, and the other guy called Mr. Racket over and asked him what was the matter. Is he going to engage in a conversation with a demon? This demon is clearly dangerous. Racket stopped behind Belmont and pumped him, "Demon." He turned to look at him questioningly, and Racket went on shouting, "Why is he hanging out with Lady Alice?" He replied with a diligently supportive smile on his face, "She's just a good acquaintance of his." At that moment, he was holding the same book about the relationship between the sexes in his hand, and Racket shouted at him, "Who is he trying to convince with that look on his face?" At this moment, he became very angry, created a magic ball and spoke to him. His recent actions can be considered a public provocation directed at him, Racket Field. So it's time to get him down to earth. At this moment, his entire body lit up with a bright magical light, and the entire audience was also illuminated by this shade. Belmont looked at him with a grin and said, "What is it?" He saw a magical monster that was created by Racket's hands in front of him. He stood in front of it and said with a chuckle, so he was afraid of this. This is a manticore, a high-level magical monster that can only be tamed by the hereditary summoning technique of the Field family. The surrounding guys were also surprised by this and started to ponder with incredible dumbfounded expressions on their faces, Manticore. According to rumors, this monster's appearance was shaped by the hero's magic power, and at the peak of its power, it is capable of smashing a city wall to smithereens. At the age of 15, being able to tame such a powerful summoned beast only means that Mr. Racket is indeed a genius. Belmont carefully examined the created monster and wondered with a puzzled look, "Isn't that right?" But before he could think it through, Racket sneered at him again and asked the question, "Is his knees shaking, little guy?" He should listen to it carefully. He should stay away from Lady Alice in the future, otherwise he, although at this point Belmont didn't listen to his threats, got up from his seat, walked closer to the monster, offered his hand to the creature, and Racket, with an incredibly frightened expression on his face, shouted at him, "What is he even doing?" He started to justify himself in his thoughts. He was just bluffing. He is not yet able to fully control such a powerful monster. This is going to go berserk. Racket was very excited by Belmont's actions. Manticore, once one of the strongest magical creatures of the demonic race, the core of this creature is created using magic. So depending on the situation, the Manticore can take on different forms. One blow from this creature is enough to break through the city wall. In the past, the 5 Moko battlefields were able to hold 1,000 soldiers of the human army, and such a strong monster is about to fly into a rage at the moment. This monster was placed right in the center of the audience. Racket looked at it with a dazed look and did not understand what he should do. And Belmont in turn touched the face of this monster and told this creature with calmness that this is a good girl. This should not be afraid of him. It must have been hard for the monster to be depressed all the time with magic. The monster looked at him questioningly and opened its mouth with a pitiful look, and the other guys were very surprised by what was happening and said with a trembling voice, "It seems that this monster really calmed down after his actions." "Oh my god." Racket glared at him and wondered how this was even possible. Did he succeed because he is a demon? However, this is a great chance to regain his dignity. Now he has to take it back. At that moment, he directed his chain powers towards the monster and shouted, "Towards it." The whole body of the monster lit up with a bright color and the monster growled loudly, then looked with a furious look in the direction of Racket, which he was very surprised, and suddenly the monster began to attack directly at him, and he was dumbfounded and trying to dodge thought, how did it even come to this? Suddenly, Belmont started to run in his direction, stopped in front of the angry monster itself and grabbed it by the fur, after which he tried to protect Racket by pulling the monster in the other direction. The monster moved to the other side and stopped in front of them from a distance. Racket looked at the scene in surprise and said, hesitantly, "He." Belmont turned to him and with an indifferent expression on his face said back to him, "He has hurt this lovely little girl with his barbaric magic." Racket was very surprised and could not answer anything, and at that moment the monster came in his direction and growled loudly, stopping in front of Belmont, who turned to the creature and said, "Over the years, the monster had to go through a lot of adversity. He will help this creature." At that moment, bright magic signs lit up in his eyes and he saw through this monster some kind of magic dark ball and thought, now to extract the manticore, he needs to break the shackles that control it. He swung his fist, around which sparkled magic power and sent these forces in the direction of this ball, after which there was a strong bang and everything was covered in thick dust. Racket sat on the ground, his face frozen with horror and his hair disheveled, and he looked at Belmont in surprise and wondered, is this guy really a demon? It's too strong to smash with just one attack. But before he could think it through, he heard someone meowing behind him. He turned around in fright and saw a cat with a large horn on its head and a tail, at the end of which was a snake's head with a long tongue. The cat continued to meow loudly, and Racket looked at the cat with embarrassment and curiosity and wondered if it was a manticore. Belmont walked past him and said there were many similar kittens in his fiefdom. Despite the fact that the appearance of these animals can change due to magic, the original appearance is still the most cute. He took the cat in his hands and this creature began to purr happily in his hands, and red spots appeared on his face from embarrassment and pleasant sensations received from the care and love from this cat. The surrounding children carefully examined it and could not understand what kind of family it still belongs to. He told the cat that from now on this creature is free. It probably doesn't have a name, so he will call it Lil Pups. What will it say? Cat meowed back at him, after which Racket got very angry and shouted at him indignantly. This is a curse. He shouldn't think that he will give him Lady Alice after that. He hasn't lost yet. Belmont didn't even listen to his threats and thought only that he always liked to pet these cats, then turned to Racket and told him that the girl was not a trophy of war. They could not be won or lost. Racket shouted back angrily, "What is he saying?" Belmont took a book about relationships into his own hands and told him everyone should understand the right ways and methods. Racket's mouth dropped open in surprise. Is this a spell book? Belmont told him that he had only just begun to understand it himself, but that he thought he was already quite knowledgeable about it. He looked at the cat and asked the question, "Lil Puss, will this help him a little?" Lil Puss meowed back at him, and at that moment a bright red magical light appeared in the cat's eyes, just like Belmont's, and moments later a beautiful girl was formed from this cat. Meanwhile, Lacey was sitting on the couch in her room, wondering if Mr. Belmont had had a good first day of school. Suddenly, she saw a book about the relationship between the female and male genders. She took it into her own hands and wondered where another such book came from. The age limit for this book was 10+ years, which was applicable for all ages. At this time, Belmont spoke while grabbing the magic wand in his hands, and now it's time for extracurricular activities. His book was labeled 18+, which means it has an age limit. At this time, Newt and Alice were walking around the academy building together, and Newt asked her a question out of curiosity. Didn't she decide to track down that demon? Why did she need to bring it with her? Isn't she afraid that she will take it away from her? After all, she doesn't have a weak interest in this guy. Alice asked her if she could talk less nonsense. He just helped her pass the entrance exam to a certain extent, so according to etiquette, she is obliged to express her gratitude to him, and she is too ashamed to go to him alone. Newt was embarrassed and spoke to her with a smile, treating her with suspicion. It seems that someone here is not being honest with themselves. After a while, they came to the right door to the auditorium, where Belmont was supposed to be, and Alice took hold of the door handle and opened it a crack with the words that it should be right here. When she opened the door, her face showed confusion and she was stunned when she saw Belmont, who was standing in the middle of a crowd of people with a book in his hands, and next to him was the cat girl he created. He spoke aloud to the rest of the audience, so during the censorship moment, you should definitely pay attention to her censorship. After all, the censorship is different, so many censors are possible. It is not necessary to assume that the duration, as well as censorship in its direction, will help to achieve a special sense of censorship. You should be extremely careful. When he explained what to do and how to do it, he showed it all on the example of a girl with his wand. The surrounding people sat and listened to him in surprise, saying, "This is a topic, for sure there is something in it." Newt, when she saw what was happening in the audience, smiled a big smile and said with delight, "Wow, he's just fearless." Alice's entire body trembled at this moment and she was dumbfounded. Racket was one of his listeners. His nose started to bleed, and he said in surprise, "Demon, no, Brother Bell, from this day on, he will consider him his big brother for the rest of his life." Belmont saw Alice standing in the doorway, turned to her and asked if she was also in class. They should find a place and sit down here. She was taken aback by his suggestion and pondered with an incredible sense of shame. Right. Then, with all her accumulated anger, she called him a dirty, lustful demon. Results of the first day: recognition of the male half is 100%, recognition of the female half is minus 10,000%. The next day, Racket said to the other students in the classroom, "So, he thinks that after yesterday, it's clear to everyone that Bell is now their older brother, and when he shows up, they should give him a proper reception. Is that clear to everyone?" The other guys were surprised by this and answered, "Everything is clear." Just as Bell was about to enter the auditorium, Racket whirled around to see that he had arrived, and then all the kids lined up in a row and shouted loudly and simultaneously, hands behind their backs in respect, "Good morning, big brother." He indifferently walked past all the guys and ignored them. The guys looked at him questioningly and wondered why he did this. One of the guys turned to Mr. Racket and asked him what it was. None of them understood why Big Brother would act like this. Racket replied, "Big Brother is challenging him." Suddenly, he began to realize that when his older brother walked past them, his gaze clearly said that their greeting was at the proper level. A certain image of the Demon King formed in his mind based on his opinion, and he imagined that Bell was asking him a question in this way, and that was it. Do they take him for a sucker? A pile of garbage? Racket decided to get down on one knee and make a bow, saying that he was greeting His Highness Belmont, which is a noble greeting. Belmont continued to ignore what was happening and read the book in his hands, after which Racket continued his attempts and even in the toilet greeted him in a soldier's way, saying that he wished him well, Commander Bell, which was surprised by another guy who was relieving himself in the toilet. He also greeted him with a gangster greeting, standing next to him in glasses and a jacket, saying, "Welcome back, Aniki." Racket was sitting at the dining room table in a frustrated state of mind, and he was still ignored. He looked at his dish with an incredibly sad expression and wondered why this was happening. Was it because the toilet's salute angle wasn't perfect? No, it's probably because you had to lower your right leg while standing on the knee. Wait, that's definitely because the sunglasses weren't round. Across from him, Belmont was calmly eating his food, completely oblivious to Racket, thinking about how much he wanted to pair cultivate with a girl. He also didn't understand why Alice had suddenly grown cold towards him, and yet he had had such a hard time getting a girlfriend. As she walked past him, he stared into her eyes, but she didn't notice and crushed the spoon in her hands in anger. He was alerted by this and thought, okay, the fact that he's alive is already pretty good. She brought a few dirty plates to the table and he wondered if that was all she'd eaten. And it looks like she still hasn't finished doing it. Just as he was thinking, Newt came up to him and slammed the table down, very close to Belmont, and said to him as she licked her lips, "They meet again, Incubus." Suddenly Racket was very afraid of her appearance and shouted, "Newt, why is she here?" He looked her in the eye and said, "She was in the entrance exam and came to class yesterday." She sat down next to them at the table, making a sound from her chest as she leaned it against the table and asked him what he thought. Does she have a good build? Would he like to walk with her? Suddenly, she came close to him and whispered in his ear with embarrassment, "She knows about pear cultivation." There was a look of fright in his eyes, and he wondered how she knew about this. At that moment, Racket fell out of his chair because of what was happening. Blood started to flow out of his nose again, and he thought with a sense of shame, which is to be expected from an older brother, even Newt is taking steps in his direction on his own initiative. He's sure that it's because she found out what kind of profound knowledge Big Brother has. He answered her with a skeptical expression, "Okay, where are they going?" At this point, Alice became angry after hearing their conversation, and loudly put her plate on the table out of anger, causing everyone to pay attention to her. Newt smiled and asked her a question, "What is it, Alice? Maybe she has something to say." She replied indignantly, "It's her who needs to be asked about this. What business can she have with this guy in broad daylight?" She came closer to her and answered by touching her chin with her fingers. She needs to discuss a student council related matter with the incubator. Would she like to hear it? She was alarmed by these words and Belmont looked at her deeply and said, "Alice, she." But before he could finish his sentence, she got angry and left the room, after which she said, "Her business does not concern him." After a while, Belmont followed Newt out into the street and continued walking at some distance from each other. Racket decided to follow them, and as he stood behind the wall, he thought, Big Brother, for the sake of mastering their training method perfectly, he decided to follow him and not leave his side. Belmont asked Newt to tell him why she needed him. She turned to him with a smirk and said how impatient he is. She only needs him to lead a pear cultivation with him. He asked her a question with a straight face. How did she know about this secret technique? She replied, even though the pear cultivation magic was created by the first generation heroes, it's been many years, so it's no longer a secret, and it's more like a legend. After all, this magic was only used once when Aaliyah sealed the Demon King. Belmont was taken aback by her words and thought, just don't let them tell him that it was magic that was created specifically to defeat him. She continued to say, obviously demons don't have magic right now. However, during the entrance exam, he gave out a huge amount of magic power. Does its strength have something to do with the pear cultivation technique? He looked at her without hesitation and thought, outwardly, she looks wild and at ease, but she also has a subtle mindset. It's not good if she finds traces of pear cultivation magic in him, the matter will get publicized. She licked her lips and said, there is only one requirement for a pear cultivation technique practitioner. He looked at her questioningly and she answered, namely, preserving the purity of the body. He is an incubus. What frequency can we talk about? Therefore, what he used was an incubus extraction technique that absorbs magic power from the opposite sex, which is why Alice ended up being so exhausted. He was dumbfounded and wondered if the incubi had such power, but well, it didn't seem like they had discovered it. He cleared his throat and said, in that case, why bring him here and start talking about pear cultivation? She told him what a jerk he was, why even ask about such obvious things? Of course, this was done because she needed his life. After saying this, she pounced on him with her claws. Racket saw this and rushed to protect his older brother, shouting to him, watch out. They looked at each other ominously, and Newt continued her assault, but Racket stood right in front of Belmont and spread his arms, shouting, Brother Bell, is he all right? He replied with a straight face, he's fine. He's more interested in why she decided to attack him. Newt chuckled and spoke, and he should have ruined everything. She didn't want to. Well, now they will think that this time he was lucky. They will see how long luck will allow him to live. Incubus. With that, she charged straight down from the fortress. After a while, a group of young people gathered at the same table in a dark room. One of them said, damn, this demon seems to be doing just fine in the academy. The other girl replied, what a pity, didn't they help him with that themselves? The girl asked her what she meant by that. Someone with a magic ball in their hands chuckled and said, "It's not that far from the truth." Inside the magic ball was an image of Alice, Belmont, and Lacey. The guys continued to discuss. This demon was able to do this largely thanks to the help of Lady Rose. Someone answered her, loudly shouting that she should watch her statements. The president replied that it's okay, he has already sent someone who will solve this problem. The president of the Academy's student council was a guy named Adnis Rose. After a while, Belmont was outside in the middle of a crowd of people and reflected that his name was Belmont. He was a demon king who had lost his magic. To restore this, he will need to study magic and pair cultivation with members of the opposite sex. The groups of people in the forest were divided into girls and boys. He looked at some girls and continued his thoughts, but once in the Academy of Heroes, which divides training groups by gender, he does not have so many chances to get close to girls, so joint practical courses are just one of those few chances. Racket surrounded him with his group of guys for protection and shouted, they shouldn't let down their guard, they shouldn't let anyone suspicious get close to Big Brother. All the boys obeyed him and persisted in guarding Belmont, completely surrounding it. Belmont, who was caught in such a vicious circle, reflected that he was facing an additional complication in this situation. Suddenly, he broke out of their protected area and Racket asked him in horror, what's going on? Why did he decide to drop the protection? He's in a dangerous position right now. He only needs to take a look at the predatory reviews she throws at him. He was pointing a finger at Newt, who was looking at him with a smirk, showing off her beautiful curves. Belmont moved closer to Racket, touched him on the shoulder, looked him straight in the eye, and told him not to worry about it. He didn't need to be surrounded by so many people, because it was much better when there was any room to maneuver. Racket showed a look of incomprehension on his face and he was completely at a loss as to how there was no need to surround him with so many people. In other words, it meant that he was saying that as long as he protected him, he was calm. He had already recognized him as his first little brother. Racket decided to continue such a game model from his thoughts and said to him in response, he should be calm, brother, he will never let down his expectations. He was trying hard to master his older brother's smile, but Belmont just looked at him in disbelief when someone touched his shoulder behind him. It was a big guy with red hair who looked at him with confidence and said, lately, he's lost his nerve, you lousy little imp. This guy's name is Brian, his magic element is earth, and his advantage is brute force. Racket was very frightened by his behavior and wondered if this was Senior Brian. What was he doing here? Brian grabbed Belmont's cheeks and spoke to him. It just so happened that he got caught in the same class with him. He wanted to take a look at the demon who dared to enter the Hero Academy and find out how thick-skinned a guy he was. He continued to pull his cheek with a menacing look and Belmont started to say haughtily, he got into the same class as them, but he just called him a senior, so he's a sophomore. At his words, Brian became very angry and swung his fist at him, shouting, lousy demon, he ran into this punch. Racket looked at the fist approaching him in fright and thought that things were really bad. This was magic amplification. Brian's power was already on the verge of being a real hero. He shouted at him, big brother, he should dodge this strike quickly. Brian chuckled and said, that's it. But suddenly he was dumbfounded when he saw Belmont absolutely calmly and carefully stop his hand. He thought about how it was a reinforced blow, but how could he have parried it in such an easy way? This freak, but before he could think about it completely, Newt stepped in and asked him not to go too far. He shouldn't be such a pain in the ass. At this moment, a teacher came to them, who pointed at them with his finger and asked them to calm down, because they were already starting the lesson. Brian glared at the whole area and said it was getting more interesting. Racket said, it looks like the rumors were true. Belmont asked him in disbelief, is he talking about rumors? He replied that recently there was a rumor that someone from the Academy was going to defeat the older brother among the students of the Academy. This Brian is notorious because of the rude attack of his classmate. He was left for the second year. Despite his dubious personality, he is already able to compete with many heroes in real combat, and Newt is the descendant of the Beastman hero. The one who convinced them to act against him is clearly no ordinary person. Belmont did not respond to his statement, and at that moment the teacher turned to the whole group of children and said, now they will start a practical lesson. Each of them will go to the forest behind him and fight with magic puppets. At this moment, bright magic windows appeared in front of the children and the teacher continued to explain the essence of the matter. Practical classes will be held in groups of 2 people. Entering the portal will take them to a random location in the vicinity of the forest. After that, the portal will automatically close. The time limit is 4 hours. Points will be awarded depending on the number of defeated opponents and their level. Racket was delighted with this challenge and said that it was just wonderful, a group of 2 people, so he would be able to protect his brother. He turned to Belmont to tell him to come with him quickly, but then he saw that he was gone. Behind him, Newt and Brian were already lined up as a team, and Brian told her to listen carefully. Woman, she should leave this guy to him. She didn't dare interfere in their business. She didn't say anything to him and just thought about how annoying he was. Suddenly, Belmont screamed behind him, and as a result, he jumped and grabbed Newt and went with her into the magic portal. Brian was surprised by this and very angry about what was happening. When they hit the portal, they started to land from the sky to the ground in the forest among the trees. Newt clutched her head and asked Brian what he was doing. He answered her without being able to get up from the ground. He had something to discuss with her in private, but would she help him get up first? She landed right on top of him and didn't get up from his body, and he reached for her. But while trying to do so, he accidentally grabbed her chest and they both looked at each other questioningly. He looked at it carefully and said, "Compared to Alice, it's much bigger. Is it related to the blood of the beastmen?" She spoke back to him to make him listen to her. Dodger, comparing her to Alice is just asking for his death. In any case, by making such a rash move, she created magic claws on her fingers and swung them directly at him, shouting that he had driven himself into such a trap. She became very angry because of his behavior and started attacking him with an incredibly aggressive look. He continued to look at her with a straight face and didn't take any action to protect himself. At this moment, a huge monster that looked like a human body but didn't have a head or limbs formed above their bodies. The entire body of this monster was made of stone, but it was covered with moss and various vegetation. Suddenly the monster landed right next to them, and Newt got up from Belmont's belly, started walking closer to the monster, waving her tail, and said that she thought these golems were something, but in reality they were just pieces of rocks that were controlled by magic. The two of them began to examine the monster more closely, and Belmont spoke, starting to shake off the dust and try to get up from the ground. Even though these monsters look like this, just like people, but in fact these creatures are creatures that are set in motion by magic. And the magic core that such a creature controls is called a node. Newt took a casual pose with her hand on her side and asked him what the whole monologue was all about. He replied while raising his gaze into the distance, saying otherwise, if she destroyed but didn't break the core, then the attack would be completely useless. At this moment, new golems that were incredibly huge in size began to approach from behind Newt. These creatures both had bright glowing green eyes and were coming closer and closer to them with a menacing look. Newt noticed something strange behind her and suddenly whirled around. She was very frightened and wary of what was happening, because she did not expect such an outcome at all. Suddenly, the golem grabbed her in its arms and began to lift her up to the sky. She was completely under his control and screamed loudly in fright. As the monster continued to shake her in its arms, she thought that some kind of horror was happening. She was even caught off guard. This monster is made of too hard stone. She can't move in any way. Belmont got up from the ground, his expression showing that he wasn't worried at all and he didn't have any sense of panic. He spoke with confidence. Finding a node requires powerful magical perception. An ordinary student cannot cope with such a task in any way. As a result, he concluded on the basis of these conclusions that it was for these reasons that they were divided into groups of two people. Newt, who still had no way to get out of the huge golem's stone hands, gritted her teeth in horror and fear and said, a little hesitant due to the stress, so now they need to activate magic perception at the same time. He spread his hands with an indifferent expression and said with absolute calmness, at the moment, he has too low a level of magic power, so even if he adds it up with her magic power, it still won't be enough to deal a blow to the monster. Newt hadn't expected such a response from Belmont at all. She was very upset and scared, which made her shout at him with incredible anger. Then why did he talk for so long in vain? Suddenly, he abruptly began to run in her direction, and at the moment of trying to free her, he said, nevertheless, his eyes allow him to see everything that is happening around him quite clearly. She turned to look at him, trying to figure out what exactly he was trying to do, saying all these words. Suddenly, his eyes lit up with a bright light, his expression completely showing self-confidence. Bright yellow magic markings lit up on his face. He decided to use magic powers like the Eye of True Knowledge, and activated it. At the moment of activation, he reflected that this is the Eye of True Knowledge. Only the Demon King has sufficient skills to use this ability. This not only allows you to see through everything, but also makes it possible to see the direction of the flow of magical energy in the armpit area. He directed his gaze in the direction of Gamma and saw a bright magic ball that both of them needed, as a result of which it hit exactly this place and part of the golem broke into various fragments. Belmont landed in turn, his hands still glowing with a bright magical light, and he began to watch warily as the golem began to fall to the ground. After which, he saw another bright magic ball and realized that it was located in the lower back area. After thinking about it, he kicked his foot right into that part of the monster's body, causing it to shatter that part as well. When it landed, many stone parts landed with it, like the remains of a monster. He stood up from the ground, his eyes still shining with a bright magical light as he continued to ponder. After several activations of paired cultivation, he was finally able to recover the amount of magic that is sufficient for flexible use. At the time when he was returning the cat named Lil Pups to its original state, he still could not use this one so freely. As he was thinking, Newt fell into his arms and he caught her. She stared into his eyes, a look of embarrassment on her face. She was surprised by Belmont's actions and her thoughts were only, is this guy really an incubus? He continued to stare into the distance with unwavering confidence in his gaze and said that they were really lucky that there were only two opponents here. With his current magic pool, he wouldn't be able to deal with a large number of such monsters. Newt still didn't realize what was happening and said with a puzzled expression on her face she wanted to kill him. Why did he need to save her? He closed his eyes and said back to her if she really wanted to kill him, she wouldn't have chosen such an open place to attack like the roof that day, and besides, she didn't mention pear cultivation. Also, to add to all this is the fact that today all her actions were aimed at attracting his attention. He looked into her eyes, she presented him with a beautiful naked girl. He did not turn off the eye of true knowledge, because of which he looked away from her to the side and was dumbfounded with embarrassment. I looked questioningly in his direction, and at that moment he raised his head up as blood started to flow from his nose. When Newt saw this, she was very frightened, after which she abruptly turned to the side and said in a trembling voice, "Are the golems approaching them again?" At the same time, in another area, Brian was very angry and spoke with haughtiness. This smelly idiot dared to fool him. He restored some of the golems and spoke with a predominant sense of revenge in his heart, saying that today he would definitely know what the road of no return was. The golems, in turn, made very loud and eerie sounds. Suddenly, for some unknown reason, Belmont fell to the ground and continued to lie on it unconscious. Newt was scared for him, sitting next to him and shaking his body, asking him the question, is he okay? He should wake up as soon as possible. Blood continued to flow from his nose, and his face was also still illuminated by the bright magic. The Eye of True Knowledge. Only the Demon King has enough skills to use it. Previously, when activating the Eyes of True Knowledge, the Demon King's enemies and companions looked as if they were under the influence of X-rays. The skeleton, the meridians, as well as the flow of magical energy, it was all in the palm of his hand, and of course the picture that he saw was not the most attractive, no matter who exactly was in front of him. His eyes glowed a bright magical red during the activation of the Eye of True Knowledge, and he treated his opponents as equals. The demon couldn't see who was in front of him. He started to think about what he needed to be given time to think, and the purple one, it should be Lacey. The breast size also matches the correct one. The negative consequences of the carrier of this ability was a poor memory for other people's faces. The same goes for appearance. At the moment, the demise of the Demon King's magical powers has caused the Eye of True Knowledge to become unstable, and sometimes, instead of seeing through someone, it only breaks through the surface layer. What if Newt noticed something moving and spoke with a sense of concern for him? Is he already back to normal? She once again pictured herself completely naked, causing him to drop his head to the ground again as a huge stream of blood flowed out of his nose once more. For this reason, he first saw the naked body of a member of the opposite sex. He doesn't understand anything at all about it, but he is really amazed and shocked by everything that is happening. Newt moved closer to him and stopped right in front of him. She straightened her posture and sneered at him, then continued to speak her thoughts. So does it mean that the incubus eye has brought him to this state? Could he not bear such a small thing, and yet he calls himself an incubus? After explaining the principle of operation of true knowledge, I omit some details about such moments. He wiped the blood under his nose with his hand, then looked into her eyes and informed her that he had already disabled the magic eye. Before he has a chance to adjust to this, he needs to be much more careful. Newt moved closer to him, getting close to his face, and said Roxanne was able to smell a special fragrance on his body for a reason. It is clearly not a simple incubus, and at a minimum, this observation is not limited to this case. She was sitting on his legs again, and she was talking to him with a smirk, asking him if he was even interested in why anyone would want to eliminate him. He asked her again, is this all happening because he is a demon? She covered her mouth and scoffed at him before replying, he's too naive after all. Of course, he is partly right about this, but only half. After all, the person who truly wants him dead is Alice Rose herself. Belmont hadn't expected this outcome at all. There was absolute indignation on his face. He remembered Alice's facial features and asked her again, how is Alice? She began to tell him a long story about how in the past, when the Demon King was rampant in the world, humans, elves, dwarves, and beastmen were able to unite in the face of a common threat and form a certain alliance. After the end of the war, the humans claimed control of 7/10 of the Bristol mainland, citing Aaliyah's merits. The remaining 3/10 were divided among the other races. People on the mainland still thought they were superior to the other races. One of them shouted to someone else that they should get up and get out of here as soon as possible. They are low-class creatures, and if it wasn't for their hero Aaliyah, they would all be living in lousy caves right now. They should roll outside and be grateful that they have this opportunity. These guys laughed out loud at the other people, and Newt continued to explain the whole situation to him, laying out all her thought processes right in the sand. Thanks to certain pictures and drawings, in order to create a certain and appropriate emotional coloring for her story. She went on to say that the elves, beastmen, and dwarves had all been completely dissatisfied with humans for a long time, and this time it just so happened that Lady Rose, the bloodline that is the symbol of human greatness, not only broke the Union Treaty that said that only one heir of the ancient hero could join the Academy, but also she brought a demon with her. It was this that gave the rest of us all the best reason to start fighting. so its elimination is a matter of paramount importance for people. Belmont looked with interest at all the pictures she had created and said that he could see that she had not really tried to draw his drawing. She got up from the ground and asked him in surprise, didn't her story scare him? He replied that this story rather bored him, everything happens as usual. Suddenly, he closed his eyes and realized something, after which he spoke, though. He remembered Alice's words that no matter what, she would end this war at any cost. There was a look of sadness on his face and he said, he's a little sorry, of course. So, for her, the descendant of the hero beastman, the reason to help him is that he can become an excuse for the other races to start a war with humans. She looked deep into his eyes, then relaxed, reached behind her head with her hands, and said to him without any sign of emotion, if you put this question this way, anything can happen, but one way or another, they should first complete the task of the lesson, and then leave it. At that moment, Brian appeared from behind her, leaping close to them and asking them a question with an ominous expression on his face and full combat readiness to pounce on them at any moment. What would they leave? They can't go anywhere from here. At that moment, the whole place shook and Newt sank to the ground and screamed in fright. The whole area was flooded with a bright magical light, and for a moment everything stopped. Belmont looked at Brian with a deep gaze and wondered, gravity suddenly didn't increase slightly. The magic ability of this type is to control the force. Brian looked at him with a smirk and said, now he's going to find out what happens to those who try to fool him, you idiot. They should be patient for a bit, his power will soon be there. But before he could finish, his hand lit up with a bright magical light and a mocking grin appeared on his face. He asked him to be quiet, and he looked at Newt in front of him and asked her if she was scared out of her head. Woman. She tried to get up from the ground with confidence and answered his question, no, it's just that she's recalling past experiences. Louts who brag about their own strength are usually not worth a damn. He laughed out loud in response to her with incredible anger in his eyes and shouted that he was congratulating her. She successfully managed to change his decision. Woman. At this moment, a bright magic circle of yellow light formed under her feet. Belmont carefully examined everything around and thought with caution, wait, the thing in Newt's hand, is it dragon saliva? He saw a flask of pink liquid in her hand. Brian swung his arm at that moment and said with haughtiness, blow by blow, he'll beat the crap out of her. She answered him, now, and in that instant she opened the flask of liquid and poured everything inside into her mouth. The action was so fast that no one had time to do anything and she jumped up, her whole body lit up with a bright magical light and she looked down at him with a malicious and haughty expression, and her whole body was covered with a new robe. Dragon saliva is a rare potion that can restore the missing mana for a short time, and at the cost of overspending life forces, it can quickly reveal the hidden potential of the user. Brian looked at her with a smile and asked the question, is this a magic booster? Looks like she still has a few tricks up her sleeve. At this moment, she began to pounce on him using the enhanced animal technique as well as the explosive beast claws. He in turn created magic barriers around his body and shouted, defensive force field, activate. After all that was happening, a strong explosion occurred at the site of their struggle, after which only dust remained around. Newt looked around and didn't know if she'd succeeded. At that moment, Brian's fist came close to her chest and he hit her with incredible force, causing her to fly to the side and blood to pour out of her mouth. He grabbed her hair and said, his power pit has a superimposition ability. Force magic is a magic whose main component is the control of the force. This has the ability to overlap multiple times in both attacks and defense. Each overlay provides double amplification. He threw her aside with incredible force and told her angrily to eat this land. They, the beastmen, and the demons of the same berry field, they are all scum. Belmont was standing a short distance away from them, watching everything that was going on. The dust from the fierce struggle still hadn't cleared, and Newt was already kneeling next to Brian. Belmont straightened his back and looked at him warily. Brian, in turn, continued to pull Newt's hair, swinging her head around. She laughed at him and asked, is that all he can do? And he was still making something out of himself. He replied that he could see she was still holding on, a woman, after which he suggested that she see if she would keep her resolve after all this. Suddenly, Brian's hand glowed with a bright magical light, and as a result, a magical portrait of Alice was formed. Newt stared at it in disbelief and didn't expect to see something like this, which made her wonder if it was Alice. He answered with a furious look, of course. The reason she sided with this demon is because of her, isn't it? But she shouldn't worry about it, because once he dealt with them, he would definitely pay her a visit. After such a message, he laughed and she shouted back at him with all the anger that he was an incredible freak. Did he really think that all his actions would get away with it just like that? He laughed out loud in response, continuing to channel his magic powers in her direction to attack, a worthless beast trying to gain the friendship of a human. If you should know your place. Its triple force overlay will send her flying. At that moment, he moved his hand in her direction, but suddenly it broke off due to some unforeseen circumstances. He looked at his bloodied limb with incredible fright and screamed in fear and bewilderment, his hand. what's going on with his hand? Belmont, who had turned into a demon who was holding a flask of liquid in his hand, said, "This is too little." The remaining amount was only enough to restore 1% of its former strength. Newt and Brian gave him a startled look and he went on to say, "This guy is too naive, and if he thinks he can easily eliminate him, then he still has to take it his own way, because anyone who gets in his way will only see death." Father Brian is a worthless man. 50 years ago, during the war with the demons, his squad suffered huge losses, and since then he has been filled with fear of other races. And his way to mitigate the fear was to constantly heal the children and teach them the same cowardice that he himself experienced. He beat Brian with a whip and shouted that he was a jerk. It still isn't able to stabilize the magic power. He asked the other kids, do they want to die of other races? Those who are not like them cannot be trusted, especially for demons. He firmly remembered the horror that their very existence inspires. At that time, Brian swore that he would never lower himself to this old man. He wouldn't let a representative of other races surpass him. Newt called out helplessly to Belmont and he turned around, looking at her with his demonic side, and she was afraid. Brian asked, "Death?" He laughed and said that he had snagged him on the sly and immediately became so cocky. Don't let him say that he really thinks he can kill a second-year student. Belmont told him not to move. First of all, have the goodness to apologize to Newt for insulting the Beastmen. Brian asked if he was kidding me. Would he apologize to Trash? But it is not surprising, because he is also garbage. Belmont told him not to misunderstand him. He only wanted to let him die to preserve his dignity. Brian used his magic and called him worthless and asked where he got so much money from. He was about to learn what true power was. Newt was surprised and wondered if it formed a magic circle of multi-step blending. Is this the power of a second-year Hero Academy student? At the Academy, the division of students into courses is not based on the number of academic years. As a junior student, you can only pass the next course if you increase your magic power, and the condition for passing the second year is to create your own magic spirit. Brian cast a magic circle 12 times and used magic spirit release spells. May he rise from hell, little Hercules. A huge magical spirit appeared behind him, and Newt thought, is this a magical spirit? It's just huge, like some kind of deity. They can't beat him, which is absolutely impossible for a first-year student. Brian said that he never lost when it came to strength, because each attack of Hercules is equivalent to a power magic attack from a 12-step overlay. So the show is over. Brian swung to strike, and the magic spirit followed suit, aiming a fist at Belmont. But Belmont stopped the blow, and Brian was surprised to remember how he had deflected it before. He thought, did he hit again? That's impossible. It was a magic spirit attack that was enhanced 12 times. How could he neutralize it in an instant? Belmont said that the so-called magical spirit is essentially the embodiment of the strongest desire created by magic. For this reason, a magical spirit and its user have two things in common. First of all, as is the case with all races, seeing the flow of magic of human energy flowing in his body, it is not difficult for him to neutralize the attack. Brian grinned and asked if he thought that was all. Dealing with a magical spirit isn't as easy as he thinks. Dark green smoke began to emanate from the magic spirit, and Newt said that the magic spirit started the decomposition. Belmont said that sorcerers use the spirit door to tap energy from a magical source, also known as magic, and the energy that is tapped through a magical spirit has an unusually high degree of purity that the physical shell of a mere mortal cannot handle. Therefore, the best way to counter a magical spirit is to use your own magical spirit. Brian exclaimed that this was nonsense and absurd. Right now, it's impossible for demons to possess a magical spirit. Once it decomposes, it won't even have any bones left. A green haze enveloped Belmont, and Brian thought to his father, asking if he could see it. So what if he's a demon? His victory is guaranteed. He will never be like him. Belmont said he understood his determined hatred comes from fear. Brian was surprised and wondered what was going on. What is this suffocating magical energy? This brat summoned a magical spirit. But where? Belmont continued to hold the magic spirit Brian's fist and said that since the magic spirit is the embodiment of emotions and desire, when the magic spirit attacks, the emotions of its owner are also transmitted to the opponent. He had seen a myriad of magical spirits supported by all sorts of desires, justice, order, and, like it, past adversities. It doesn't matter what kind of emotions are behind the magical spirit. The suffering that dominates these desires remains unchanged. This is the second common feature. The green haze receded, and Brian wondered if this demon had turned the corruption of Hercules. But it's not like that. Belmont said that his magical spirit, when injured, repays its opponent in the same coin and allows him to taste the same suffering. The summoning ritual happened at the very moment when he activated decomposition. Now Brian understood it was his magical spirit. Belmont told Cain to manifest her greatness. With that, 3 snakes popped out of his body, pouncing on Hercules, biting into his body. Hercules' body started to change due to Cain, and Brian backed away in horror and asked how this could have happened. Hercules turned into Brian's father and he was horrified to tell him not to come near. Belmont said that for causing suffering, Cain will repay 7-fold. Kane raised the whip and Brian, remembering all the suffering in his childhood, began to cry and ask him to stop. Kane lashed out with his whip, and a heavy dust rose from the blow. At this time, Adnis came out of the portal and Teresa said that she could sense magic fluctuations in that direction. Adnis replied that it looked like he would have to meet him in person. At this time, a crack was formed on the battlefield from the impact, which almost reached Brian. Belmont asked why. He looked at Newt, who was holding his hand, and asked why she had stopped him. She smiled and told him to calm down. This is the Heroes Academy. If he uses violence to solve problems, everyone will think that he is going against the academy itself. Then what is the point of him entering the academy? Belmont thought that he really was acting too impulsively, even though it only happened a few times, but the behavior of those people really drives him crazy. Brian got to his feet and said it was impossible, demons couldn't have that kind of power. He swung for a punch and told him not to dare look down on him. At the same time, Belmont swung his arm, hitting him with a magic whip. The impact had burned away all of Brian's clothes, and a bald spot shone on top of his head. Belmont said everything was going to be fine as long as he didn't kill him, right? Newt walked up to the naked Brian and said it looked like a toothpick, just like she expected. Belmont said they needed to get back to business, and then he pushed her to the ground and bent over her. Newt got flustered and asked, "Right here. Isn't he in too much of a hurry?" Belmont's brow furrowed in pain and she asked, "Is he okay?" He replied that it was a side effect of using dragon saliva. If he didn't release the remaining power, then the remainder might end up consuming him. He thought that pear cultivation magic was the only thing that would help him right now. Newt asked how she could help him. He leaned closer to her and began to pull back her hair, looking into her mouth. He slapped her in the face and she told him to stop. He thought, what are the conditions for activating pear cultivation? The very first time he'd done it with Lacey and the time he'd been with Alice in the council chamber. Suddenly his head jerked up in pain and Newt thought, does it look like he's in a lot of pain? Don't incubi transmit their flow of demonic power sexually? In other words, for it to release enough energy, they need to. Now she understood. She started to pull off her clothes and said that if it would help ease his suffering, then she didn't mind. Belmont stared at her, blood spurting from his nose. Newt was scared and said it looked like he was in a terrible state. Belmont pulled away from her and said it looked like he had no choice but to find Alice quickly. Newt asked indignantly, isn't she good enough? Suddenly, both of them felt a strong pressure and Adnis asked who allowed him to say that name. Brian opened his eyes and thought, isn't that a huge amount of energy? He quickly got up and called out to the student council president Adnis. Adnis looked at him and said that it looked like the situation here was rather unpleasant to the eyes, truly shameful. Brian covered his face with his hand and asked for his forgiveness. Adnis put a hand on his shoulder and said that he didn't need to apologize, he knew that he tried his best. Brian thanked him and Adnis said that Secretary Teresa told him that he was using his sister's safety as a threat to the enemy. Teresa adjusted her glasses and Brian said it wasn't like that. Adnis gave him an indifferent look and said that he hoped he was prepared for the consequences. Brian looked at him in horror, and at the same time, he was frozen. Newt was flustered to see this, but Belmont remained calm. Adnis said that now that everything was settled, it was his turn. Belmont thought that just now, when he had used his magic, he hadn't felt it at all. He feels that the demonic power that is consuming him is spreading. Adnis noticed this and said that it looked like this trash was about to be consumed by his own demonic power. What a pity, the magic power that the demons wanted so much would kill them. He looked at Newt and told her that if she left now, he would leave aside the case of her trying to get close to Alice. I will be through a spy. Did Belmont think he was a spy? She said that if she had been the same, she would have thought about it, but now, especially this guy, she wouldn't let him kill her. Belmont sensed something and wondered if it was because of Newt's residual power. It seems like her power is still active, which is why he can sense the emotions hidden behind her power. She hates humans, and of all the races, only humans are unhappy with the land they have conquered. Forests, mountains, rivers, and the land of the Beastmen were gradually conquered by them. Undoubtedly, she was originally a spy sent by the Beastmen clan to get close to Alice. That's how she ended up with her as a child. Then she offered her a cake and smiled, and as they grew older, they became more and more friends. As time passed, Newt began to feel confused, but she was the only one who could tell that it wasn't Alice's fault. She thought back to the day Belmont taught the boys a lesson and they saw it. Then the evil Alice said that he was a pervert and a stupid idiot. He even has the nerve to teach such a thing at the academy. Then Newt said, really? She feels that after meeting him, her mood has improved. Alice whirled around and exclaimed, what is she even talking about? Newt sighed and said that she was really stubborn at times. Alice pouted resentfully and said that she thought they were best friends. Then Newt looked at her with a smile and mentally apologized. Maybe she wasn't good enough to be her friend, but at least. She returned from her memories and used her power to create a vortex around her, which also captured the members of the student council. She grabbed Belmont and threw him into the air, telling him to take this opportunity and run to Alice. He was surprised and she tearfully said that he should apologize to her for her. She thought that everything would be fine. He was the only one who could make Alice happy. She said it was their turn now. Belmont landed next to her and told her she was right. She turned around and exclaimed, "Why is he still here? Did she cry for nothing?" Belmont shrugged and asked what made her think she could decide what was best for him. She made him waste his magic to come back here. Either way, he can finish it off in just 3 moves. Newt asked, "So why did he come back? He's not in a position to fight him. Besides," Adonis interrupted her and asked, 3 moves. Is he hard of hearing?" A huge chunk of ice appeared above them, and Newt said that besides, no one could see him casting his spells. She called out to Belmont, who was trapped in this block of ice, and began to emit light. The others began to wait for what would happen next, and Belmont was able to repel the attack. Teresa was surprised and thought that this was the first time she had ever seen someone block the president's attacks. Belmont said that usually magic is transmitted through space because space is easy to imagine, that is, to form a circle and then release magic. Its magic manifests itself in the representation of time. At the moment of use, the magic already reaches the opponent, so he just needs to do the same thing to put up a shield quickly. It's pretty easy. Adonis thought, it took him 3 years to imagine the time in his head, and he figured it out so quickly. Belmont dropped to one knee in pain, and Newt asked if he was okay. She noticed that his hand was gone, and Adonis said that his body was about to be consumed by his magic. Every time he uses magic, he speeds up the process. Ice dragons appeared behind him, and he said that if he continued to put up a shield, his magic would completely consume him. Magic circles appeared around Belmont and Newt, and Belmont began to defend against the attacks. He protected Newt, and she told him to stop. Let her fight. She couldn't stand by while he was being consumed by his own magic. Only he could do Alice. Belmont interrupted her and told her that if he let her do this, she would die. Newt exclaimed, "Who cares? It's okay if she dies." Belmont asked if it was her wish to die. She replied that people like her who would betray their friends. Belmont didn't finish listening and thought that when he sensed Newt's emotions while controlling Cain, the magic of pair cultivation responded. That time when he was with Lexi, it was because she hoped that he could revive the demon clan, and he promised her that he would do so. With Alice, it was because she was desperate for protection. This was also his intention. These are definitely the conditions for starting a pair cultivation. He asked Newt what she wanted. A tear rolled down her cheek, and, remembering Alice, she said that she wanted to live, apologize to Alice, and this time become her friend for real. Belmont said that then he would grant her her wish. After saying that, he kissed her and there was a bright flash. Adonis thought, did his attacks disappear? Belmont's demonic form was gone, and he stepped forward with Newt in his arms, saying that the second move was made, the last one left. In the first stage, he understood its magic. In the second stage, he stopped the absorption. The last move remained. Adonis said that he had just used pair cultivation. Teresa exclaimed, "Pair cultivation." Adonis said it was magic created by his grandmother. According to legend, this is a combination magic that can only be used by 2 people of opposite sexes. Along with powerful magic, there will also be a feeling similar to lust that grows in the hearts of both. However, even if he somehow learned this magic, he wouldn't defeat him with a 50-year-old antique. So he made a mistake. Belmont replied that he didn't just want to beat him, but to beat him in 1 move. Adonis thought that he was so arrogant. Even if he was the same person from 50 years ago, he wasn't his opponent right now. Belmont held out his hand and said they were starting. Adonis thought he was attacking, but suddenly a portal appeared, which Belmont and Newt quickly entered. After a few seconds, Adonis asked Therese what had just happened. She adjusted her glasses and replied that the time was up and the teleport opened automatically. It looks like this is the 3rd move he mentioned. Belmont returned to the playground and Racket asked if he was okay. He ran to him and said that 2 very amazing magic powers had just broken out in the forest, and they were all very surprised. He saw Newt on his hands and said it was a spy. Isn't that Newt? Belmont looked at her and said something had happened. She remembered their kiss and quickly jumped down from his arms, saying that nothing had happened, let him forget. She thought that there was no need to apologize to Alice either. Racket wondered what had happened between them to make them forget it. Did the older brother use his lessons and turn the enemy into his own? They immediately knelt in front of him and congratulated him. Suddenly Alice called out to Newt and she turned around. Alice was walking towards them with a quick, heavy gait and had already called out to Belmont. Racket and the others hid behind him and told him to save them. Belmont asked what had happened. Newt looked away and wanted to say something to Alice, but Alice took her hands and told her that it was good, that she was fine. Newt was surprised and Alice said that just now there was a strong release of magic in the forest. She thought that something had happened. Newt smiled and hugged her, telling her that everything was fine. Adonis came out of the portal and said that it wasn't like that at all, it wasn't over yet. He walked over to his sister and she looked down and asked why he was here. Adonis said her name, then looked away in embarrassment. Teresa cleared her throat and called out to the president, startling him. He cleared his throat and said that since everyone was here, he would announce something important. He looked at Belmont and said that this demon is the former demon king, Belmont. Racket very surprised and asked, so he? Alice asked incredulously, is this idiot the king? Newt smiled and called him Little Incubus, and then everyone said, is he the demon king? Alice looked at her brother and asked, didn't their grandmother seal the Demon King stone statue? Teresa said that not too long ago, the stone statue was broken. There is a high probability that he broke the seal and woke up again. Agnes looked at the portal and said that they would know the truth of this matter by listening to her. A woman came out of the portal and Belmont was surprised to see the king's knight, Amu. Amu greeted them and Agnes said that this royal knight had witnessed the night when the stone statue was destroyed. He pointed a finger at Belmont and asked, she saw the man who emerged from the broken statue that night? It was him, right? Amu waved her finger and replied that it wasn't him. Agnes didn't finish listening to her and exclaimed that he was right, he was the Demon King. But suddenly he turned around, realizing what she had said and asked what it meant. She said it wasn't him. The Demon King that night was a 2-meter tall man with muscles all over his body. He wasn't that childish. Agnes asked, what about the previous testimony? Amu said that with all due respect, but she would never say anything about the child, and he would not be able to defeat her. Agnes quickly turned to Belmont and said that it was impossible. If he wasn't a Demon King, then how did he learn pear cultivation? Belmont calmly replied that Alice had taught him that. Agnes was covered in ice from shock and Alice exclaimed, what kind of nonsense is he talking when she taught him this? He replied that a huge amount of skills could be passed down no matter what. His first pear cultivation was with her. She was embarrassed and Agnes mumbled in shock that Alice, his sister and the demon were a pair of cultivators. Teresa said it looks like the president has entered as state again. She took Agnes away and told Belmont that don't let him think this is the end, it's just the beginning. Belmont thought that he had told Lacey to wait nearby and help him if anything happened. This night must be Lacey in disguise, right? Amu was gone and Belmont thought she was finally grown up. It was the perfect disguise. Suddenly, a girl appeared behind him and called out to him. He turned around and said Lacey's name in surprise. He wanted to ask her something, but she smiled and said it was good that he did it on his own. The one who replaced the knight is also a demon. What a powerful transformation technique. Belmont quickly turned around and thought, if Lacey is here, then who is it? A week has passed since the practice session. Master said that demons possess certain magical powers. Belmont didn't listen to him and thought that the condition for pear cultivation was to satisfy the heart's most sincere desire. Fortunately, he regains a bit of his magic power every time. And he still doesn't know who that person was. He needs to speed up the recovery of his magic power. The teacher came up to the table and Belmont asked what they were doing. Belmont was sitting on a chair with the words God is among us written on it, and around him were his devoted, half-naked fans. The teacher exclaimed, why the hell are they dressed like this? What other god? Belmont thought that his current situation was a bit complicated. It was time for the lunch break. Belmont sighed heavily and so did Racket said he got the highest status, but why does he still look unhappy? Belmont started talking and they got scared. He said it wasn't enough. Racket thought he was saying that one class wasn't enough. His goal is the entire academy. He thought that was true. He was too narrow-minded. Big Brother's goal is more grandiose. He handed him a pamphlet and told him to take a look at this. They can start with this. They came to the festival and the girls started inviting people to their gardening club, and the Beastmen girls invited students to the volleyball club. Belmont and Racket went past members of other clubs, and Racket said that the academy's promotion system wasn't based on the academic year, but rather on the level of his magic power. But if he wanted to rise quickly, there was another way. They can join the club and get 3 hero medals. Belmont asked who the heroes were. Racket confirmed his words and explained that this is the embodiment of strength and hero status, and it is also a symbol of honor. There are 3 ways to get them: national recognition, academy recognition, and senior recognition. The latter 2 are more common. Academy recognition is recognition of magical power, and senior recognition is achievement in club activities. Belmont said Racket's name, and he wondered, with a pang, if he had made a mistake somewhere. Belmont put a hand on his shoulder and gave him his trademark smile, telling him he'd done a great job. He thought that it turns out that there are places like clubs that don't separate men and women. Thus, the matter of pear cultivation is resolved. He approached the crowd of girls, but as he walked, they began to move away and whisper among themselves. Someone said that she had heard that he taught obscenities. He claimed to be some kind of pervert god. Another girl asked what the demon was doing. Another girl said that she had heard that he was the Demon King. Racket was overjoyed to hear this and said that Big Brother's reputation had spread throughout the academy. Other Belmont fans were also happy about it, and he thought he felt like a part of him had died. Alice sneezed and Newt asked what was wrong. Did she catch a cold? She replied that she had a feeling that someone had said something bad about her. At this time, Racket Belmont happily said that with Big Brother's fame, they should find a strong club. Suddenly, a huge shadow loomed over them and very muscular men asked if he was Belmont. Right. They had heard that he was very energetic. Let him join the wrestling club. One of them tore up his suit and said that those who followed him were just ants. The seniors will show him what a real body is. Belmont turned away and called out to Racket, who nodded and said he understood. He said let him run, they'll stop them. The men asked him not to run away. Let the seniors train him. Belmont turned around and thought that he needed to hurry before the situation got even worse. He looked forward again, and when he saw someone in front of him, he thought that he couldn't stop. He bumped into the man and loomed over her. Belmont opened his eyes a crack and asked apologetically, "Is she okay?" His face flushed, and he wondered what this girl was like. She interrupted his thoughts and said that he was the demon boy who had recently entered the academy. She got to her feet and said her name was Felix and she was the president of the fencing club. Would he like to know more about her club? He asked her if she didn't mind being around him. She asked, "Is he asking this because he's a demon?" She replied that it wasn't. Someone told her that all races should. But suddenly the voice of a student interrupted her and he told his friend to look, it's Felix. The guy said he heard Felix the hybrid. Dark wings began to grow behind Felix, and Belmont said she was a half-blood angel. Felix confirmed his words and said that she was a mix of angel and human, a despicable creature. She apologizes for such a strange invitation to the club, perhaps he should look at some other clubs. Belmont said he wanted to join the club. She turned around in surprise and Ion said that he didn't believe anyone was born despicable and he was also interested in swordsmanship. He thought that if he went back, he would definitely be caught by the members of the wrestling clubs, so he had better join the cute girls' fencing club. Felix was surprised and thought that someone had finally joined the fencing club. She smiled and said with a laugh that it was great. Then they will start the entrance test. At this time, Newt was walking along the square with Alice and said that she was not sure that the little incubus had come. Alice said it was as if anyone cared about him. Newt noticed something and turned around with a smile and told Alice that it seemed the incubus was flirting with someone. Alice grudgingly replied that she said she wasn't interested in this jerk. Felix stood in front of Belmont and said that the rules were very simple. He just needed to survive 3 rounds against her and show his strength. Did he understand? Newt noticed her and said she looked familiar. Belmont said it wasn't a problem. He thought it was strange. Why didn't anyone join the fencing circle? But there were a lot of spectators. Felix smiled and said that then they would start. With that, she rushed forward, and Belmont barely had time to activate his eye. He jumped back and thought, isn't this a test? Why is she using so much strength? Even his eye reacted at the last moment. The playground between them broke down and a girl yelled at Belmont that if he didn't want to get hurt, then just let him give up. Belmont turned around and saw Alice. She shouted that there is only one person in this club, not because no one is joining, it's all about the president of this club. She's the heir to her grandmother's swordsmanship. Belmont remembered that very day 50 years ago. Sitting on the throne, he told Aaliyah that she was so confident. Does it have any special magic? She said, magic. One sword is enough for her to deal with it. Belmont came back from his memories and thought that her techniques were the same as Aaliyah's. Alice said she was dangerous. He'd better give up. Newt told Belmont that he couldn't win this time. Felix said that unfortunately this is the end of the test. Miss Alice is right. Belmont disagreed and said he wanted to start the second round. Alice got angry and called him a stupid idiot and asked, didn't he hear what she said to him? Newt held her back and told her to wait. He must have a plan. Belmont thought that when he dodged the sword, she was smiling from the bottom of her heart. He said that if he passed, he hoped she would promise him something. She asked what? Newt asked him what he was talking about. Alice calmed down and asked if he really had a plan. Belmont said that she should promise to give him the most precious thing. He thought that perhaps her wish was for someone to join the club, so this was a great opportunity for pair cultivation. Felix thought it was the most expensive. Newt said that was expected of a small incubus. Alice exclaimed, what a shameless thing to do. But what was he up to? Felix agreed and said that if he passed the test, she would give him the most precious thing. Belmont activated the eye and thought that as expected, her magic power was actually integrated with the sword. This is a state that can only be achieved through extremely hard training. However, as long as he could see the direction of the magic power, he would be able to predict its movements. Felix warned me that she was attacking. A second later, she abruptly took off, and Belmont thought that by following the flow of magic power, he would block her attacks. But suddenly, he saw that it wasn't her sword that he blocked and was surprised. What he blocked was the sword aura formed by magic power. Felix appeared behind him, but Belmont managed to parry her blow and they jumped away from each other. She smiled and said it was amazing that he was able to turn around and fend off the second attack. Belmont said that in saying this, he should thank her. Felix was surprised and he said that thanks to her sword, he knew what her true desire was. A snake crawled around his sword and Felix thought, is it a magical spirit? Belmont approached Cain and told him to say how he felt. The Angel clan is famous in the mainland for its swordsmanship, and the most talented people in every generation become disciples of the holy warriors. The clan respects pure blood and half-breeds grow black wings. Felix is a half-breed born to her mother, who traveled and gave birth to a foreigner, but her father disappeared before she was even born. When she was a child, the most important thing her mother taught her was that she was a despicable creature, she should live with her head down. She was beaten up and told not to insult their swordsmanship with her squalor. Thanks to her mother's persistent pleas, she finally got the chance to learn swordsmanship. She knows that no matter how hard it is, she must suffer because she is a despicable creature. Her mother even apologized for giving birth to her. These were her last words to her mother. After that, she thought about ending her life, but before that, she appeared in her life. The woman said that she would be her disciple. The man told Aaliyah that she couldn't joke about it. Aaliyah interrupted him and asked, didn't they say that she could choose the most gifted child? Then Felix said that she was a despicable half-blood angel, so as not to tarnish her reputation, let her. But Aaliyah didn't listen and threw her a sword, and immediately after that she attacked her, but Felix realized in time and managed to parry her blow. Aaliyah said that when swords are crossed, there is no difference in origin. Regardless of their origin, she can sense the opponent's will through the sword. Felix would never forget that feeling, her sword telling her that they were equals. Cain moved away from Belmont's head and he thought that it had been 50 years since they last met. He didn't know if those 50 years had gone the way she wanted them to. Felix said it was unexpected. He also has a magical spirit. She took to the air and said that then she could use the swords of her heart. Newt saw it and asked what it was. Alice exclaimed that it couldn't be. Adnis was surprised and those watching the fight said that these were wings of light. Felix said that the wings of light create images of swords, and he needs to deflect a real sword from which he can die. Belmont told her to attack. At the same time, Felix flew in his direction and thought that this was the person her teacher was talking about. Belmont prepared for the attack and thought that he would take this chance to kiss. Felix thought back to the day Aaliyah had said that today she was going to teach her the wings of light. Felix was surprised and asked, is this the same party? Aaliyah confirmed her words and said that if one day she met someone who could solve this trick, they would definitely teach her more than she could. With these memories, Felix rushed to Belmont and thought, is he the right person? At the same time, 1,000 swords appeared above him, heading straight for him. She looked at the sword in her hand and thought that she wanted to know what kind of wool is hidden in his sword, what would reflect her sword. With that thought in mind, she lunged at him, but Belmont threw the sword aside and she was surprised. Belmont said that of course she wouldn't be able to resist the temptation to cross swords. He moved behind her and told her that she was fully exposed. At the same time, there was a blow that raised dust and Alice said that it was a strong blow. What happened to them? The dust settled and she saw Belmont, who was lying on top of Felix, and said he'd made it. Alice asked, how the hell did it fall so perfectly? Felix asked how he won so easily. He replied that it was because she was too focused on her swords. He helped her up and told her that it wasn't swords that were equal, but those who use them. It's not just swords they can cross. The moment Belmont said those words, Felix remembered her teacher and tears came to her eyes as she smiled and greeted Belmont at the fencing club. He thought that she had met such a person. Belmont smiled and thought, this is a chance for pair cultivation. Belmont approached her and said they would talk about the previous agreement. Felix replied that she would do it. Belmont pulled his lips forward for a kiss and thought it was time. But Alice called Felix the eldest and asked him what he was doing. He could have killed him. Suddenly Belmont remembered what Lacey had said about how men and women of the Angel clan were sometimes hard to tell apart. He decided to check it out with the true eye and made sure that Felix was a man. Felix scratched the back of his head awkwardly and told Belmont that he would ask for more advice in the future. On that day, the Demon King experienced the longest thief state of his life. 2 days later, he was still in this state. Racket and the others peeked around the corner and thought Big Brother had been like this ever since that day. But what happened? They don't understand what's going on at all. Someone in the hallway asked, is that the guy in the classroom? Suddenly Racket called out to him and said that his daughter-in-law Alice and daughter-in-law Newt were here to see him. Alice exclaimed, what other daughters-in-law? Belmont was overjoyed and thought that after experiencing such darkness, his body was craving the surging vitality. Newt licked her lips and said they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Alice said that if she hadn't been told that something was wrong with him, she wouldn't be here. Belmont immediately got up from his chair and Racket exclaimed that Big Brother was finally up. Felix appeared behind Alice and Newt and greeted Belmont. Seeing him, all of Belmont's joy vanished in an instant and blood spurted out of his mouth. Racket got scared and said he was bleeding. Felix came over and said that he was here to fulfill a promise. He gave him the medal and Belmont asked what it was. Felix replied that it was the hero's medal, his most precious possession as president of the fencing club. His progress on the entrance test deserves it. Alice said that she didn't think their pervert was also targeting hero medals, but she would collect them first. And he and Newt joined the fencing club, too. At the Hero Festival, she will be able to get other hero medals, so she won't lose to him. Newt said they could compete, even if she wasn't in the same club. Why would she join a fencing club? Alice blushed and told her not to talk too much. She calmed down and said that in the second year, he would probably be transferred to their class. Belmont wondered if they were going to transfer to their class. Alice walked away from him and said that in any case, she would not lose to him. Racket asked if he didn't know. Because the number of people in the academy is too small, the academy can no longer divide students into male and female classes. Belmont put a hand on his shoulder and asked with a creepy smile, "What is a hero festival? He needs to participate immediately." Racket laughed and said he was going to tell them. The Heroes Festival is a celebration organized by the Academy. To participate, they need to get permission from all the teachers in the class. But don't let him worry, he left this trivial matter to his family. The next day, he brought the permits and told Belmont to look at it. But he saw that Belmont wasn't given permission and said it was impossible. Even with family connections, they didn't get permission. Belmont looked at the list and said that only this teacher did not allow it. Racket asked, "But who is it?" They went to Aphrodite's office, and after checking the names, Belmont said that this was the teacher, Aphrodite. Racket, he said that the Aphrodite family is not so easy to negotiate with. They are a famous berserker clan and distant relatives of the Rose family. During the war, they had relied on their crazy blood, they had made great progress, and their status was no lower than his family's. Aphrodite's voice came from her office, saying that even if he was in the academy, she still didn't agree. That's all, she has to go to class. Another teacher said that she had already said that she should not have warnings against demons. Aphrodite replied that she had already said that it wasn't because he was a demon, he was an incubus. Belmont heard them arguing and thought he should knock first. He put his hand to the door to knock, and at the same time Aphrodite came out of the office saying that this is too much. Deciding to knock on the door, Belmont accidentally touched her breast and said that it was a coincidence, he wanted to knock on the door. Aphrodite blushed and told him to die by blowing up the academy's walls. She led them inside the office and told the headmaster to take a look at it. Doesn't this behavior explain everything? He has absolutely no self-control over his desires. People who can't control themselves should be isolated. Belmont and Racket looked at the huge hole in the wall and thought that she was the one who was most out of control. Belmont said it was indeed a coincidence just now, but usually demons need to estimate the size in order to. Aphrodite interrupted him and asked with a menacing look, "Do they need to evaluate? How many did it touch?" Racket was startled, and Belmont calmly replied that if you didn't count her, then. Racket gagged him and told him that Teacher Klein was in charge of discipline. Big Brother should watch his words. Does he even know what the students and teachers call her? She is a berserker without lust, the last Iron Virgin in the wizarding world, a person with zero tolerance for shown love, the Iron Lady. Aphrodite exclaimed that she had heard everything. He talks too much. Karen cleared her throat and said that she didn't think Belmont did it intentionally, so it was better to just keep it simple. Aphrodite bowed to her and said that she would like to ask to be sent to the guidance room and she would personally make it better. Racket surprised, the guidance room. So the Big Brother is waiting for this. Karen replied that something might change after that. Some time later, in the disciplinary room, various torture devices are hung on the wall. Belmont sits bound in a chair and wonders why this room feels familiar. Somewhere he has seen something similar and this method of binding seems familiar to him. Aphrodite says that confession will help him. He must be honest about his crimes. Belmont asks what crime is she talking about. He doesn't remember doing anything like that. Aphrodite says he should let her help him remember it. What did he do to Alice during the entrance exams? What did he do to Newt in combat training? He even molested Felix. He's a cocky incubus. He can't control his desires. He should tell her quickly. When he came into contact with these girls, did he have any indescribable details? Belmont wonders, isn't she the berserker in charge of discipline? How did she know about pear cultivation? She even wants to know the details. He says that he did all this with 100% self-control. He did it with honor and pride. Racket, who followed him out of curiosity, overhears and thinks it's worthy of an older brother, although it sounds a bit strange, but he's very confident. Aphrodite lashes out and asks if he dares to be impertinent. He's too cocky a guy. Belmont thinks it's weird. He felt as if he had just sensed some special magic power in that whip. Aphrodite asks if he is ready to start. Belmont agrees and says she can hit him again. He thinks he needs to feel more of the magic power in this whip to understand what's going on. Aphrodite says he shouldn't underestimate her. Racket thinks it's all his fault and that his older brother suffers such humiliation. Belmont activates the magic in front of his eyes and realizes that this is it. Behind the seemingly cold magic, there is a layer of red-hot power. He realized that red was the color of her suppressed desires. Aphrodite says that if he doesn't tell her, he won't be able to leave this room. Belmont thinks that she is like a berserker with crazy blood. She always has to restrain herself, so she has to use this method to satisfy her desires. He smiles and charges the magic in his hand, thinking it's easy to help her. Aphrodite is surprised and asks why the whip is approaching her. She falls to the ground and asks what happened. Why doesn't her whip obey her? The whip is wrapped around her and she says it's getting tighter and tighter. Belmont looks at her and thinks that the book says that massaging a woman's multiple acupoints can release the passion trapped in her body. The whip hits several points on Aphrodite's body and she wonders what it is. What was this feeling that she hadn't experienced before? Racket says that his older brother's screams are so painful that he can't wait any longer. 20 minutes later, Aphrodite lies on the floor and asks what did you do to her? He doesn't have to think about her giving up because of this. Racket goes inside and asks his brother if he's okay. Aphrodite is surprised by this and asks who allowed him in. Belmont says he's fine. Racket thinks he meant that he's doing well, because the whole academy is his target. He thinks it's a big goal. As expected of an older brother, Aphrodite stands up and says that the instructions are over for him and he has behaved well. She allows him to participate in the festival. Reckitt says that's fine, then he got permission. Belmont wonders why she suddenly changed her attitude. Aphrodite looks at him and wonders how dare he do this to her. Such a blasphemy to the feelings she holds like a berserker. He will still receive his punishment during the festival. Sometime later, in the classroom of the first class, Rickett says that the Festival of Heroes is a festive event organized to ensure that current students always remember the heroic deeds of past generations. Since the level of the event is the highest for the academy, the requirements for the level of participants are also very high. In theory, only those who have moved on to the second year are allowed to participate, while other students must obtain permission from their teachers. Students must form a group of 4, modeled after the hero group, to participate in the 3 main stages. The first stage, Legend of the Heroes, is designed to review the battle with the demon race. Participating students play the role of heroes, choose one of the battles, and fight the demons played by the academy's teachers. The second stage, Immortality of the Heroic Spirit, dedicated to the memory of heroes who died in the war. Students will enter the palace with bronze statues of heroes who sacrificed themselves for centuries. Students must answer the relevant questions, and those who answer correctly will pass on. If the answer is incorrect, the bronze statue will be activated. Students must beat this to pass on. The third stage is the Anthem of Heroes. Too few students have reached this stage, so we don't know anything about it. It will be an uphill battle. Will he prepare? Belmont reads the book. He agrees and says that he found what he was looking for. As expected, he didn't get to experience all of this. After a while, the girl asks, did she hear that Belmont got permission to participate in the festival? Is that correct? The WMD agrees. The girl says this is a good opportunity. After it participates in the festival, its characteristics as a recycling material will become higher. She would know what to do, wouldn't she? Lamu says that she knows and her body starts to disappear. Roxanne says that they must extract the magic power and capture the Demon King. Sometime later, on the day of the festival, Reckitt thinks it looks like Big Brother, inspired by the sacred festival, should follow in Big Brother's footsteps to create a miracle. What does his older brother do? Belmont counts to 40 and thinks that finally there are a lot of girls around him and he will be able to activate pair cultivation. Reckitt is surprised and wonders if he's already started memorizing strong opponents. Karen says that she is announcing that the Festival of Heroes is officially starting. They will start forming teams. According to the tradition of the festival, the descendants of heroes can be the first to choose teammates. Belmont thinks it's obvious that he should be in a group with members of the opposite sex. Suddenly, he bumps into someone, stops, and looks up. A member of the wrestling club says that this time he should join them. He should go with them and join the seniors and get to know the beautiful. Newt approaches them and tells them that they should let him go because she wants this guy in her group. A member of the wrestling club says that because of the privilege of descendants, they have no way out and she can take it away. Newt hugs him and asks him how he feels about it. Not only did she save his life, but she also chose him first. Alice approaches them and tells them that the Festival of Heroes is a sacred holiday, so she advises them to be more serious. Newt asks what she cares about them. Or does she also want to be in a group with a small incubus? Alice turns around and says that she didn't come over to be in a group with him, but to keep an eye on her. Belmont thinks that even though they know each other, they're still the opposite sex, so it's a small problem. Newt says they still need one person. Who would they take? Roxanne says that she decided to be in a band with him. Alice says that she chose this idiot first. Newt says that to be more precise, she chose him first. Belmont says he can't estimate the size. Is she male or female? He doesn't want to repeat his previous mistakes. Roxanne says she's a girl. Belmont immediately says that then he agrees. Alice asks this idiot, is it so important to him that there are girls in the group with him? Newt says it's weird. Why would a proud elf choose a demon? Roxanne says it doesn't matter who she chooses. What matters is that she will be the one who leads them to victory. Alice says that she is as arrogant as ever. Reckitt, who is watching this and is jealous that he couldn't go with him. He says it's good that he has so many brides who protect him. A member of the wrestling club says he doesn't have to worry, because his elders will protect him and help transform his body. A short time later, they entered the dragon dungeon under the academy. Belmont asks, is this the academy's dungeon? He sees it for the first time. Alice asks, there are 4 passages, do they really need to split up? Belmont looks at the wall and thinks the image looks familiar. Newt says it's a tough assignment. Alice says it's a battle of decline, one of the most important and tragic battles between several major races and demons. That battle lasted 10 days and 10 nights on the plain of Alazik. Later, at the St. Gard volcano, the heroes were ambushed by a fire demon and suffered heavy losses. They fought back fiercely, breaking through to the high castle, where they began a bloody battle with the Demon King's guard. In the end, it took the sacrifice of 2 heroes to turn the tide. A magical inscription appeared in front of them. They must defeat the fire demon, defeat the demon king's guard, and occupy the high castle. Belmont wonders if this is all to test their strength. Roxanne leaves and says that she will see him later. Alice gets angry and asks why she only said goodbye to him. She gets very angry and says that she is leaving. Newt says she's curious about what kind of demons she'll meet. Alice tells this idiot that he should listen to her carefully. He must try not to die here. Belmont agrees with her. At this time, Aphrodite stands on the castle tower and asks, are they finally here? She holds a fireball and says that she has prepared for their meeting. Belmont is walking down a dark corridor. He hears a voice and realizes that it is a long-lost children's demon song. He turns around and sees something behind him. He's been able to see the monsters and wonders if they're demonic guardians. He thinks it's a good thing and tells the children of the demon race that he's back. The monsters continue to run at him, growling menacingly. Belmont remembered that they weren't real demons, just puppets. A magic circle appears in front of his eye and is about to take a look at it. He examines these demonic guards and wonders, why are all the guards female? He swings his fist and thinks it doesn't matter, they're just puppets, the magic he's recovered is enough to deal with them. He charges, gathering the magic in his fist. At the same time, Alice has also encountered guardians and says that they are very weak guardians. Newt says if that's all. Roxanne says that then it is not worthy of the title of the Festival of Heroes. Belmont defeated all the guardians and says that of course, they are all dolls, even the size of all the same. Suddenly, a strong bolt of lightning struck behind him. He goes further down the corridor, and when he comes out, he asks, is this the volcano of St. Gard? A magical inscription appears in front of him. From this moment the battle begins near the volcano of St. Gard. Belmont says it looks like the so-called Battle of the Plains. Aphrodite says this is just the beginning. She laughs very loudly and viciously. Belmont sees a volcano erupt, hears laughter, and asks if it's the laughter of a fire demon. A demon appears in front of him and asks, is he the hero who came to challenge her? Belmont wonders when the fire demon also became a woman. Aphrodite thinks that in order to distract a freak like him, she not only changed the gender of his opponents, but also increased their shapes. But she had forgotten that if she cast a spell on one puppet, the bodies of the other puppets would also change. Absolutely all the guards became female. The second fire demon asks, is she the hero who came to challenge her? Alice thinks that men of the demon race have very strange pectoral muscles. You Belmont, will there also be such forms? Newt gets angry and says it's impossible. Why is this demon's form bigger than hers? Roxanne also met a demon and wonders why the male demons here are so huge. Maybe they have a special magical power hidden in them. The demon says that the fire demon is the protector of Mount St. Gard. Only by stepping over its corpse will he be able to advance further. Belmont thinks it's the right thing to do, it's what he taught them back then, but it always seemed very strange to him. The demon says that if he loses, he will have to kneel in front of her and repent of his sins. Belmont wonders if that's what he taught the demons, but he'd heard it somewhere before. Aphrodite covers her mouth with her hands and thinks that she has said too much. The demon uses the spell Wrath of St. Gard. The ground around Belmont has caught fire and he thinks it's a traditional fire demon clan skill. Surrounded by intense flames, no creature will be able to escape alive, unless his magic is strong enough. At the same time, Roxanne goes to the demon. The demon says it was very fast. At the same time, the demon's body was cut open by streams of magic. Roxanne walks past the demon's body and says it was boring. Belmont thinks it's getting hotter and hotter here. A magic inscription appears in front of him. Does he want to give up and stop the battle with the fire demon? Belmont refuses and thinks that it is just a puppet. He remembers that the flame of the fire demon uses its own magic power as fuel. Although it is strong enough, it won't last too long, otherwise the demon won't have enough magic power to maintain its own state. Using the restored magic power to put up a protective barrier first. But what's going on here? His barrier can't withstand this flame. It seems that he was mistaken, because behind the puppets are teachers who continue to provide support. Not only will the puppet's magic power not run out, but it will also continue to grow. Aphrodite says that she will take good care of him. The demon opposite him is stronger than the other three combined. The demon continues to envelop Belmont in flames and asks if he is ready to surrender. He had to get down on his knees, and maybe she would spare him. Belmont says she must be joking. He hasn't knelt to anyone in the last 1,000 years. The demon swings his fist and says that he is too arrogant. The demon throws a very strong blow, which causes a strong column of dust to rise, but Belmont managed to dodge this attack. He thinks that his magic power is running out and he won't be able to hold on for long. Since the puppet is controlled by magic, there must be a magical connection between the puppet and the teacher. Magic circles appear in front of his eyes and he notices that there is a place on his chest where the puppet receives a magic signal. The demon asks if he is ready to give up. Belmont jumps high and thinks this is his chance. He deals a powerful blow that destroys the demon's body. The demon screams loudly in pain and falls to the ground. Belmont landed behind the demon and looking at the magic core says that it turns out that they rely on this thing to transmit magic power. It's very funny. Aphrodite asks, what's going on right now? Why is her magic power draining so quickly? She falls to the ground and realizes that he has found the magic transmitter. It looks like it's over. She needs to stop transmitting magic immediately. Suddenly, the core in Belmont's hands explodes. The demon tells this pitiful demon that he must not think that he has won. Belmont realizes that it looks like he has figured out who is behind the puppet. He says that it doesn't matter what she says, but without it, a puppet is no better than a wooden doll. With a weak magic attack, it destroys the demon's body and moves on. A magical inscription appears in front of him. The battle with the fire demon near the Saint Guard volcano is completed and he must return to the original point. Aphrodite says it's quite difficult, but it seems like she has to go on stage in person. After a while, when the battle with the fire demon was over, Alice says it's been a very long time. Did this idiot fail? Newt asks if she's worried about him. Alice asks why she should worry about him. She's just afraid that he'll drag the whole group down with him. Newt says she doesn't need to pretend to be around her. Roxanne, who came in just now, asks if she's so worried, why didn't she help him earlier? Alice says she has already said that she is not worried. As long as she can move forward, then she doesn't care. Roxanne asks, did they not know that if one team member failed, the entire group would be eliminated? They are surprised and ask, is this true? Roxanne says she lied to them. Alice is very angry and says that she is going too far. Newt holds her back and tells her to calm down because now is not the time for tantrums. She turns around and sees Belmont walking down the hall. She hugs him and tells him that he did a great job and he did it. Alice and Roxanne say at the same time that she should stop acting like this. Next to them appears a magical inscription. They must defeat the close to the Demon King, which is able to create up to 108 clones. The Lady of High Castle is one of the most powerful female guardians. This time, one of the Academy's professors will take on the role of a female guardian of the Memorial to Heroes. Her abilities are an exact imitation of a female guardian. This includes her combat skills and weaknesses. All of her abilities will be exactly the same as the female guardian back then. Belmont asks, do they think the Demon King is someone who does nothing but engage in strange pursuits? Newt agrees and says that this is exactly what was written in the books they read as children. Belmont says that's not the case. Who wrote these books? It teaches children bad things. Newt says he's just an incubus. Should he say such words? All the aisles start to close and they notice it. Belmont knows it's starting. A girl appears above them and tells the heroes that she has waited too long. Belmont wonders if that's the voice of a little girl. It seems very familiar to him. The demon tells them welcome to the High Castle. Belmont wonders why Lacey looks like a child. Newt asks, how could an ordinary female guardian kill two holy heroes at that time? Roxanne says that beastmen will never be able to understand something like this due to their level of intelligence. Newt gets angry and asks, what did that damned elf just say? Alice holds her back and tells her that she should calm down because now is not the time to be angry. Lacey tells the heroes that they must show her their abilities. She uses magic and many copies of it appear in the room. Newt asks, are they clones? Aren't there too many of them here? This corresponds to the story of the Demon King's past. Belmont thinks he can't even explain something to them. Lacey's clones are closing in on them to attack them. Newt destroys these clones and says that she can't be defeated that easily. Alice uses magic and says that it was her cue. Roxanne also uses magic and says that they should try not to interfere with her. Alice asks this idiot why he doesn't do anything. Belmont ignores her and keeps counting. She asks what he thinks there. He says he's counting how many clones there are. Roxanne kills another clone and says it's the 70 she killed. Alice asks, but why aren't any of the clones missing? Belmont says it's the power of the clones, killing one makes another appear. Only by destroying the real body will they be able to win. Newt asks, then how do they find the real one? If they continue like this, their magic power will run out. Belmont conjures magic circles around his eyes. He examines the clones and finds the real body. Because clones created with the help of magic, there are no magic flows in the body. But how could he defeat her? It took him most of his magic power to deal with the fire demon. If he can make up for it. He wonders if there aren't magic sources nearby. He says he needs their help. Alice asks if he has found a real body and can defeat the demon with his weak magic. Belmont says he's using their power. Alice asks, does he want to use the previous trick to steal her magic power again? Newt asks this little incubus, does he want to use that technique again? Alice asks if he takes away her magic power, then what will she do? Roxanne says that people always think only of themselves and she regrets the sacrifice of her ancestors. Newt says that two heroes were sacrificed at that time, perhaps they gave Aaliyah all their magic power. Alice says that however, this has nothing to do with the human race. Roxanne says they should think about it. Whether it's the Academy or the continent, why does the human race interfere in everything? Just because Aaliyah fought the Demon King in the end. Newt says this isn't the time to talk about it. Roxanne asks, now that the demon race is back on stage with them, what will the human race choose? Alice remembers when she met Belmont and says that even though she doesn't know what he's going to do, she believes him and it has nothing to do with whether she's human or not. It can absorb her magic power. Roxanne thinks this is very good, because the more magic power he absorbs, the higher his magic factor. Belmont begins to take magical power from the girls' bodies. Roxanne didn't expect his magic control to be so strong. After all, she only wanted to give him a portion of her power. Belmont thinks this is it. He knows very well what Lacey's weaknesses are. Some time ago, Lacey tells the Lord that she has cleaned all his clothes and cleaned the whole room. He can give a new order. Belmont says she's doing great and she's very reliable as always. Lacey says that she is ready to do anything and swear loyalty to him until the day she dies. Belmont remembers that she is his closest maid and she is his most loyal. Lacey bows to his portrait and swears loyalty to the Lord until death. She also swore to his statue and even to his shadow. Belmont says she should worship everything. Lacey notices a pair of underpants on the statue outside the window and asks what her lord's underpants are doing there. She takes it back and says there's nothing wrong with it. Belmont thinks that Lacey's devotion made her kneel down just when she saw him, and involuntarily kneel down as soon as she saw something similar to him. This is her weakness. If she knelt down, then he could attack her and defeat her. He summons a creature of magic similar to the Demon King and calls out to her. Lacey is surprised by this and thinks about it. He wonders if it works. She calmly stands on the ground and asks, is this all he can do? Belmont wonders what's going on. Why didn't she respond? Isn't he as good as he was before? Lacey uses a magic whip and strikes, but he blocks this attack with magic. Belmont asks, isn't this her obvious weakness, why she doesn't follow the rules? Lacey says it's because there's no need to follow the rules right now. Her magic dissipates and Aphrodite goes on to say that it doesn't matter if the opponent is a freak like him. Newt says that he is a ruthless berserker, the last Iron Virgin in the magical world, a person with zero tolerance for showing feelings, the Iron Lady, the teacher Aphrodite. How can they fight her? Aphrodite says she can actually hear them. The girls were very much afraid of her. Belmont tells the teacher that she must not forget that he also knows her weaknesses. Aphrodite defends herself with her hands and asks what is he going to do. He immediately uses magic power. The magic whips start reaching out to her and she asks, is this really happening again? The girls say that this idiot even has attacks that suit him. It looks very exciting. They didn't think demons could fight like this, and it's interesting. Belmont says it's over. Aphrodite blushes and asks not to do it. Magic whips press down on her acupoints. She says that these children's games are enough. Belmont asks what happened. Aphrodite set up magic barriers and blocked his attacks and asks, did he want to repeat the old trick? Unfortunately for him, she had already blocked those acupoints with magic power. Belmont thinks that she was enjoying it a little, but Aphrodite interrupts his thoughts and attacking says that he should accept the real punishment. She strikes very hard with her magic whip. Girls start to worry about him after such an attack. Roxanne thinks that the magic factor still needs the Demon King, so he can't be allowed to lose here. Belmont was able to resist the whip attacks. His entire body was injured, and he thinks that even though he absorbed the magic power of the three girls, he can't use it fully now. He must dodge until he finds her weaknesses. Aphrodite asks, how is this for him? He's already ashamed, isn't he? Belmont uses magic on her eyes and wonders where the weakness that her repressed desires will inevitably lead her to is. Aphrodite swings her whip and says that she will beat this sense of shame into him. She strikes very hard with her whip, causing a large cloud of dust to rise up. She says that this time, she will finally be able to completely fix this disciple. Belmont stands with his clothes off and says he's ready to continue. Aphrodite is very surprised by the sight of him and her nose starts to bleed, causing her to fall to the ground. Alice looks at her and asks, this is probably the first time the teacher has seen a naked man, right? Newt asks, isn't Iron Maiden a silly nickname? Aphrodite is surrounded by magic and thinks that the first time she saw a naked man, so many feelings appeared inside her. All her repressed emotions are getting out of control. Belmont says that it turns out that if you suppress your desires too much, after being subjected to strong positive stimulation, she loses control and falls into chaos. This is its huge drawback. Belmont calls on Cain to help him. His magic covers Aphrodite's body and he thinks berserk magic is good enough. She thinks that as a warrior, she shouldn't be at the mercy of desires. She raises her hand and uses magic, thinking that she should be able to restrain her desires. A magic cage appears around her due to the fact that she used the spell prison of suppressing desires. Belmont's horns have grown larger and he wonders if, in order to suppress the desires in her body, she decided to imprison herself. Aphrodite radiates magical power and screams in pain. Belmont thinks that if she continues to bully herself like this, she will surely die. He's going to use the absorbed magic power to see if he can use it. He summons a yellow magic power sword. He rushes forward and wonders if he can free her. He strikes with his sword and destroys the cage with magic. At the same time, someone is walking down a dark corridor and says that you can't let the demon get out of here alive. Alice asks, did he really win? Newt says it probably is, because it's too quiet. Aphrodite lies on the floor and thinks that she is using this feeling of full release of magical power. She also has a certain lightness that she has never experienced before. Belmont thinks he's doing very well, his magic power restored by 20%. Aphrodite sits up and asks why he helped her if she treated him like this. Belmont says there's no shame in facing up to your desires, he just showed her how to do it. Aphrodite blushes and says that it looks like she shouldn't have treated him like this and called him names. She congratulates them on completing the task successfully. Everyone is starting to enjoy it. Newt hugs Belmont and tells this little incubus that he was great. Can he repeat on her what he did with her? He asks, does she also have repressed desires that need to be released? Alice asks, isn't she totally embarrassed, considering he's naked? Newt asks, what's the big deal? Roxanne thinks that the Demon King's magic power has increased and everything is going according to the script. Alice throws clothes at Belmont and tells him to stop going naked. He can take what she found here, only he should stop walking like that because she's ashamed of him. Newt says it's embarrassing that she's embarrassed by it. Belmont puts on the clothes that were thrown to him and she says it suits him. Alice says that this armor fits very well on him, as if it was made especially for him. Aphrodite says that even though it's a prop costume for a demonstration, it also has positive effects. Roxanne says he's becoming even more like the Demon King now. Suddenly, the wall next to them collapses due to a strong explosion. Alice asks the teacher what's going on here. Aphrodite says that she doesn't know because this is all not according to the script. Belmont says they should be careful because something is coming. The monster tells this pathetic demon that it is using its blood to pay homage to its fallen comrades. Newt is surprised and asks, is this the holy hero, Klim? Alice asks, isn't he dead? Aphrodite wonders why the dead hero appeared here, and why does it have such terrifying magic power? Some time ago, in the Martial Spirit Hall, the hooded man asks if it's too risky to use black magic to unleash Klim's fighting spirit. His magic power is much greater than that of the teachers. The second person says that there is nothing to be afraid of, because this is not the first time that the spirit of a warrior returns to the battlefield. If the demon dies, no one will think much of it. What happens if someone else gets hurt by mistake? There are at least 3 descendants of the heroes. The second person asks, which hero on this wall didn't die fighting demons? If their descendants die as well, they will become even more famous. Belmont dodges Klim's attack and lands on the ground, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. Alice says that the dungeon is starting to collapse. Newt says it's unpleasant, but their magic power still hasn't recovered. Belmont says they're leaving and he'll hold him up. Alice says that she will help him, and the others should run away and report everything to the academy. Belmont says she can't do anything without the magic power, so she has to get out of here. Aphrodite says he's right, she'll only get in the way here. She should follow her and they would go down the staff corridor. Klim says he won't let anyone escape from here. Belmont runs very fast down the tunnel and thinks they should change the battlefield. The girls run away through another tunnel and say that they should run faster from here. After a while, 2 magical trails are moving around the large pillar at high speed. Klim catches up with him and tells him that he should taste his axe. It strikes very hard, causing a large cloud of dust to rise. Belmont couldn't completely block this blow and thinks that the magic power of the axe is getting even greater each time. Isn't 20% magic power enough? Klim tells this demon that he will cut it down. Belmont thinks that because it's a spirit body, it's impossible to see the movement of magic power. Klim is going to attack with his axe and says that now he will kill him. Suddenly, the magic whip stops this attack and it surprises him. He turns around and sees Aphrodite, who stopped his attack. Belmont asks the teacher what she's doing here. He doesn't have time to finish because she says that even if her magic power hasn't recovered, she won't let her student die in front of her. Some time ago, the guy holds out the toy and asks if she likes it. Little Aphrodite is surprised and asks, did he do it himself? It is very cute. The guy was embarrassed and asks if he can kiss her. She blushes and says it was disgusting. He doesn't have to ask a girl's opinion on such things. The boy starts to reach out to kiss her, but suddenly a bolt of lightning strikes between them. Aphrodite asks her father why he is here. Her father grabs her hand and tells her that she should go with him because it's time for them to go back. She tells her father that he has to stop. The boy says that he will definitely come to her birthday party. Aphrodite cries and tells Evans that he has to come, she will wait for him. After a while, the toy lies on the floor and burns with a magical flame. Aphrodite sits in a magic cage and asks her father not to do this. Her father says that she should always remember her identity. She is the future candidate of the Berserker family, and she carries the honor of the entire family. From today on, she is not allowed to interact with anyone of the opposite sex. She must be a skilled Berserker, ruthless and unfeeling. Aphrodite cries and screams in pain as her body burns with magical flames. At this moment, Klim swings the axe and says that she should not interfere with him. Aphrodite continues to hold onto her whip and is thrown back towards Belmont. Klim asks why is Berserk on the demon's side. He would forgive such a betrayal. His body begins to fill with strong magical energy. Aphrodite says that the Chaos Axe can destroy everything within its attack range, and if they can't dodge, they will die. Belmont thinks that even though he doesn't know if he can do it, there's no other way. He apologizes to the teacher and Cain goes to her. Aphrodite screams in surprise. He asks Cain to show him her innermost desire. Some time ago at a birthday party, Evans greets Aphrodite and she turns to look at him, delighted. He wishes her a happy birthday. She shakes her head and thanks him for that. After a while, Evans didn't show up again until after the birthday party that day. Aphrodite is sitting in a magic cage and her father says that this is the end of today's training. By the way, that guy named Evans passed away last week. He sent a man from their family to express his condolences. These words surprise Aphrodite very much. He says she should definitely remember who she is. Aphrodite is sitting on her lap, tears falling on her clothes. Because of this, she screams loudly with resentment at her father. At this moment, Belmont appeared in a new space and wondered what that sound was. He notices a doll lying on the floor and wonders if it's a puppet. A magical flame appears on the toy, it rises and increases very much in size. Belmont is not surprised by this and summons his magic sword. He swings his sword and strikes very hard with the sword. The toy is destroyed and inside sits little Aphrodite, who cries and says only the word no. Belmont holds out his hand to her and she notices and asks, isn't he? Evans says it's him and he came here to meet. In the present, Belmont sits next to a crying Aphrodite in the center of a magic circle and he says that he will grant her a wish for his sake. She looks at him with a small smile and thanks him for it. After that, they kiss each other. Klim lights up a very bright light and he asks, what is it? Belmont was able to use strong magical energy and apologizes for needing him to die again. Klim asks this child, how dare he say that? He would destroy it right now. Belmont asks, does he consider him a child? That's right, he's still the boy he used to be. He lands a very fast blow with his sword and cuts off the hand in which Klim was holding his axe. The monster screams in pain and Belmont says it's over. Aphrodite says that's not true, because he's still alive. Klim says that he lost, his magic is unstoppable. Belmont takes the axe of chaos and says that unfortunately there is no magic in this world that he cannot control. He holds the axe in the air with magic. Klim wonders how this is possible. Was he controlling his magic? What kind of demon could have such magical control? He looks up and sees the huge magic spell that Belmont is using. He tells this hero that he can rest in peace just as he